Welcome back to the Bourbon and BS podcast, everyone. Oh, you might want to turn me down a little bit. I'm a little just blew out their speakers. Yeah, maybe that's good.
A little hot.
Little hot mic. Yeah. clipping. So yeah, welcome back, everyone. We think this is episode 214. I asked Nate because he has a better recollection of this, even though I type it in before going live. And so, anyways,
we all make mistakes sometimes.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do. But I want to thank you guys for tuning in. I want to thank our sponsors briefly here. You guys, first and foremost, on patreon.com/Bourbon and BS podcast. That's where you guys can do a monthly contribution. We still have a bunch of people doing that. We appreciate it. It helps us do this. Let us host it on out of our time. It makes it worthwhile, but also, streaming it live, all the technology, getting it on the podcast apps and everything like that. We appreciate that. Don't need any propane refills this week. Thank God. It's 70-some degrees right now in Ohio, so we're happy about that.
I love it when the warmest day of the week falls on podcast night.
Me too. We'll be regretting that if it hits like 95 here soon. But anyways, I want to thank also you guys that have contributed through just like the one-time contribution at Venmo, and that's at Bourbon and BS. And that's a way you guys, if you want us to buy a certain bottle or if you just want to shoot us over a quick contribution, we appreciate that. That's the easiest way to do it instead of doing the reoccurring thing. And also buyjack.com. You guys can support the show by doing that. Buyjack.com/Bourbon and BS. Should have the new ones up, the new colors of the 3/4 up. Hopefully this week. Our contact there was out of town the last week or so. So check that out. I've got the blue podcast shirt on. Nate's got the green that will be coming down. It is still up, I think, unless he's taking it down. But that one goes to charity, and we'll be making those donations here, hopefully when he settles out from the last 2 months here. For that, our cut of those shirts, that is a way for then we can actually put that extra $10 for the charity, St. Baldrick's. So appreciate that. And also thanks to Tinder Box at Easton. Tonight we are lucky to have a cigar that was featured at the Smoking 10 event that they just had, their once-a-year release, and that is going to be the Aurora Broadleaf, and we'll talk about that here. So that's going to be the featured cigar, thanks to Tinder Box at Easton. And then also Altadis, we've got the Romeo y Julieta Reserva Real. So thank you, Altadis, Josh Bentley, and all the guys and girls over there, and for the support to the Tinder Box and the podcast. And then last but not least, BS Cigar Company, gold and silver are now available. And they are going to be from Plasencia, the gold, and Espinosa, the silver. And you guys can try those out. We had a great special at the 10 event as well. And right now there is a 5-pack that's available at Tinder Box at Easton for a sampler price that is 20% off.
Yeah. 5 cigars for the cost of 4.
Yeah. Not bad.
Yeah.
Not
5 4
bad at all. So that being said, Nate, how are you? Are you still on vacation? Was that last week?
No, vacation was last week.
That's a shame.
Well, it was funny though. Monday, my first day back, for some reason I couldn't get into any of the applications I needed to for work.
Mm-hmm.
And so I contacted IT early in the morning and just nothing all day long.
Yeah.
So it was one of those old days. So it's like I come back, and because of technical issues, I basically had another day off, except I spent the whole time staring at my computer, hoping something would work.
Hoping.
And it didn't. But it was like an extra day of vacation, but I got paid for it without using a vacation day.
That's the sweet life right there, folks. That's a sweet life. What'd you bring us here? We got the Maker's Mark, but a special private selection, yeah?
Yeah, so this is part of the Maker's Mark private selection, and OHLQ calls this their all-star collection. So the Ohio Department of Liquor Control did a series of picks for the state of Ohio. So the bottle that we have on our right at the center of the table is the Maker's 46.
Yep.
Which so like a month or two ago, I bought a bottle of that because it looked new.
Yeah.
Turns out it's just regular Maker's 46. They changed the label on it and it says French oaked, but it's the same as Maker's 46. What Maker's 46 is Maker's Mark 46, and there's 10 French oak staves in the barrel.
Okay.
So that's what gives it a little bit of different characteristic. What they do with the private selection is they have 5 different types of wood staves, and they will do different combinations of 10 total staves.
Right.
So
that's on the 46, right?
No, that's on the private collection.
That's on the private.
So on the
That was 10
46,
also.
so on the 46,
right.
it's 10 French oak staves.
I got you.
That's
okay.
it.
I got you.
On the Maker's Mark, it's still 10 staves, but it can be in different combinations of the 5 different staves that they use. So on the bottom or on the backside of the little neck tag that comes on the bottle, it actually says there are 1,001 combinations.
Wow.
Because 5 different staves to choose from, 10 staves total.
You do the math.
I forget how to do that equation.
Well, we know the answer, so you don't need to.
Yeah.
Core common core math.
There you go. No, but like if you remember the ladies at Bourbon and Blondes, they recently did a Maker's Mark one, and so
they have last I heard they have 15 bottles left if anyone's interested in that selection.
Yeah, so theirs was kind of the same thing where it's a combination of these different oak staves. But one of their staves, they went as high as 8 staves just from one type of wood in their barrel. This one, they're only utilizing 3 staves, but 10 total staves.
Say that again.
They're utilizing 3 of the 5 staves available to pick from. Still doing 10 total staves.
Got it. All right. Thank you for the clarification. I was like, that math, I know that math doesn't add up. The fuck?
No, so the staves that they have to pick from are baked American pure, seared French cuvee. I'm guessing on that. Maker's Mark 46, which would just be your regular French oak staves.
Okay.
Roasted French mocha and toasted French spice.
Okay.
Those are the 5 different staves that the state of Ohio did. This one's got 4 of the seared French cuvee, 1 of the regular French oak for Maker's 46, and then 5 of the roasted French mocha.
Okay.
And this is coming in at 110.5 proof. And this was actually released last year. OHLQ has done this before. So they did it in July last year. They did another set of them in November. And they always call them something funky. So this one, like I said, this one's called the Caramel Mocha Bomb.
Yeah.
There's pecan pie, milkshake, Grandma's Kitchen, Queen City, Brownie Sundae, caramel corn, kettle corn, honey crisp blossom, chocolate covered almond, and campfire s'mores.
Well, they're creative.
Yes, they are. I if I remember correctly, like the first time that these came out a couple years ago, like Grandma's Kitchen was the one that everyone went after first for some reason. And on OHLQ they still have like the tasting notes and profiles and all that stuff. But yeah. So I had gone to the liquor store sometime last year, and they had a few different varieties of these. And so I was like, why not? I'll pick one up. And I'd basically been holding on to it for a podcast.
Which we appreciate.
Yeah, you're welcome. In the state of Ohio, these are going to come in at $70.
Yeah, you were not going to tell me beforehand.
But you were right on your guess before.
Yeah, I was in the ballpark for sure. So with this, before we get to the cigar, which I'm enjoying the cigar, I like this blend. And I know Jerry
I talked too much and it went out.
Yeah, that's all right. But yeah, so when Jerry from La Aurora is I know he tuned in. I don't know if he's still on there, but we were talking to him before the podcast. For those listening live, we were a little bit behind for a couple of reasons. One, there's a tree branch that could be entering my house here soon. Hopefully we'll get that taken care of. Talk to my neighbor about that, their tree. But very nice and accommodating.
And that limb looks, on the dead side, so it may not be very solid.
Don't want to chance it.
I know you don't.
I don't know how solid my roof is. I don't want to battle it out.
Touche.
Could wake up and that's in the guest room. But anyways, so thanks for tuning in, guys. We also had some internet issues, yada, yada, yada. Same as always. Thank you, Spectrum. I'd love to have them be a sponsor of this by just providing good service. What were you gonna say?
I don't even think it was the internet that was the issue before we went live. It was
Before, well, we had a weak signal. I restarted the computer, and then StreamYard asked me to get a new code, and then I did that, and then it couldn't access my camera,
even though they were both checked.
even though they both checked. And so then I restarted Chrome, or whatever. You guys don't want to hear this, but anyways, Sean Anderson says that guest room ain't that bad. Well, and it's getting set up, so it'll be even better for you next time you're in town, Sean. Christian was adamant about him staying in there, even though it was on the floor. She made the bed for him. So when we saw this Makers, and he told me what it was, when they told me what it was, and it was this caramel mocha bomb, I was like, it's not flavored, right? And he said, no. I said, okay. So I remember them naming these things kind of like that. In fact, when we were on Whiskey Business, I want to say we did some sort of a Maker's pick as well.
That was between you and Jake.
That was Jake and I over at Dino's place.
Mm-hmm.
But regardless, expecting based on name, I don't want to speak for you, Nate, but I was expecting strong notes of caramel,
super sweet,
maybe sweet, creamy, like a little bit of coffee, because caramel,
coffee,
mocha,
2 cream, 2 sugars, kind of
bomb. Like they say, it even says bomb.
Yeah, it does.
Like I'm expecting like this is going to be like, oh, they had to have added some flavor to this, but then we took a sip,
and we both kind of looked at each other like, what is that? What is that? Because it does not taste like a Werther's.
It is not a caramel mocha bomb to me at all. Not like it's not bad. Don't get me wrong, but it's one of those things when you go into it expecting something and then it's not that. It kind of throws you off, and it's almost like, wait, do I like this? Like,
it fucks with your psychology a little bit.
Yeah, it doesn't take much for me. But it's the nose. That's what I was expecting, something like either in the nose or obviously on the palate, that it was going to be more of like this caramel or mocha.
So,
and I didn't get much on the nose.
Yeah, I don't get
kind of muted.
Yeah, on the nose, it was more of more of that oak with kind of buttery tannin structure to it. But it definitely didn't come across sweet, because on OHLQ they actually say on the nose sweet buttery caramel. That's on the nose. So that's where the caramel in the name is coming from. It's supposed to be what you get on the nose. And this bottle had been sealed. It's not like I
no.
It's not like I opened this a while ago and it air got into it and it oxidized while it was sitting in my house. I cracked it not 2 minutes before we went live.
Yeah.
And so not getting that sweetness on the nose that the name suggests you would get definitely threw us off there.
Now, granted, we did have a sip of something that was a little stronger, right? Before.
But that was over an hour before.
I know. Just trying to work with this.
That was over an hour before, and that came in at a much higher proof than this. And on that one, like on the nose, there were so many flavors and aromas. And then even though it was like 131 proof, like it went down very, very smooth, had great flavor to it. Again, that was an hour before we went live.
I know. And this is 110.5, so this is no light whiskey, if you will.
No, it's not. But on the palate, I definitely get a lot more of that toasted oak, like what you would do in a double oak.
It's a little sharp, though.
It is sharp.
It's very,
and that's a lot of that oak, and if you remember, so it's got
that's not a bad idea. Jerry says a couple drops maybe to open it up. I'm gonna do that since this is my second.
But so it's got 1 of the Maker's Mark French oak stave, and then 4 of the seared French cuvee staves, and then 5 roasted French. So basically all 10 staves that are in this one are French oak. Different treatments, different types of wood, but they're all French oak. And that may be why it's coming across a little sharp, because you and I have had, the Maker's 46 French oak recently.
Yeah.
And I remember the gentleman at the Tinder Box that we shared that to, when he smelled it, he guessed that it was Maker's Mark because I didn't show him the bottle. He guessed it was Maker's, and he tasted it and goes, "That's not Maker's."
Yeah.
And it turns out he loves Maker's 46, but for some reason it didn't taste like Maker's 46 to him.
I think you messed with his head too.
I did,
because you just like stonewalled him when you.
Oh yeah, I had a great poker face going.
Yeah. We say this every week. We need to get a dropper.
I keep meaning to go by a store and it's on my to-do list.
All right. Well, I always I pour very, very little in there, but I just feel like it might be too much to really be. Yeah, and then you do it the smart way. Cool. Yeah, that's fun to be showing up. I hope you washed your hands.
Not since petting your dog.
He got a bath a few months ago. It's fine.
Okay, should be good. There's enough alcohol in this to kill it.
Licks himself. Sean says finger works, dip and flip. I like that.
But no,
go ahead.
Like I said, a lot of that oak on it, and then vanilla, the sweetness that comes across on the palate. It's not like a caramel sweetness. It's a little softer, more like a honey type of sweetness. It's not very bold.
It's not. Have you taken a sip yet?
About to. I saw you reaching for your glass. I didn't want dead air.
Yeah, it happens. It takes the sharpness away for sure. At least on mine, but I might have added a little bit more. What do you think?
You may have added a little bit more because I still get a little bit of that sharpness, but now the finish actually lasts longer for me. Like there's a little bit more bite to the finish now, a little bit more heat on the finish.
Okay. See, for me, it is a nice warm finish, but it's not.
Okay.
It doesn't have warm. The sharpness. When I say sharpness, it's not bite. It's not like the heat or anything like that. It's just kind of like a bright. It's not. It's borderline like tart. You know what I mean? Like it's like kind of gets you kind of clench up a little bit.
Like kind of make your cheeks pucker a little bit.
So on my face.
Yeah, those cheeks. Sorry.
Okay.
I guess I should have specified.
Jesus.
That would be the tannins, as they would say.
Yeah, that's definitely kind of, subdued now. It's got a nice flavor. Yeah, I mean, I agree with pretty much most of what you said. Not what I expected at all. When I read not the description, but the name of it, and then now you're reading that. But it's a pleasant one, but it is. I wouldn't call it that for sure.
No,
I would. I would have never called it that.
Yeah. So they also say for the palate, honeyed toasted nut. That's what the palate is. So
get the honey and toast. Obviously, I don't know about the nuttiness.
Sweet buttery caramel on the nose, honeyed toasted nut on the palate. And then an opulent long finish complemented, get ready for this.
I'm ready.
By a whisper of smoke and cocoa powder. A whisper of smoke and cocoa powder. There's the mocha.
Is it a whisper of cocoa powder as well? Or
no,
just a whisper of...
Probably a whisper of smoke and cocoa powder.
So a full cocoa powder, just a whisper of smoke.
A whisper of each, maybe.
Equal parts whisper.
So where's the bomb coming in?
Are we drinking whiskey or eating a breakfast cereal? Sean says. You know what? This would be good in the morning. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah. Well, like I said, one of the other ones is called Grandma's Kitchen. So
yeah.
There's pecan pie, milkshake.
Bobby Crow, he's watching. He's just named favorite color, your dream vacation. I was like, is he drunk? But I think he might be trying to ask questions for part 2.
So he's jumping the gun.
Well, you probably just read the description right now that I put on there. So, part 2 is going to be taken to the.
Yeah, good one, Jerry.
Yeah.
OHLQ and their marketing. That's right.
So I think it's a good bottle. It's not really what I expected. It's good. Obviously, they did a lot of different barrel picks. So it's kind of, I think if you are really an enthusiast and you're, in the Ohio area and you're trying to collect them all, or at least not collect, but buy them to have it and try them all, you're going to get a lot of different expressions. So I think that's part of it when you're doing this. I don't know if this is if Ohio or anyone else is going to do just one barrel pick, private selection. For me, this wouldn't be it. I don't think I would select this if I had an opportunity to try different, they do little samples or whatever their options are. I don't know what the process is at Makers. This wouldn't be the one that I'd pick for one. Now, if you had, how many do we have total from Ohio?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11.
Okay.
Last year they did 11 of them.
So if you're doing 11 and this is one of the 11, then okay, you know what I mean? Like you're trying different things. Bobby Crow is sending stars now. I still don't understand it, but he just sent 1,000 of them. I think this is something coming from like the TikTok crowd. I don't know. But thank you, Bobby, for the support, obviously. As always, good to hear from you out there. Hope all is well down in Tejas. But yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like this wouldn't be the one pick. Like if you and I were like going out and doing like a bourbon and BS community pick, and it's like we went to Makers and like we were able to do if you like, hey, I like this one, I'd be like, nope.
So let me ask you
I don't say that in like it's a bad bottle. I'm just like, no, veto. This is not like this can't be the best.
If you're doing a pick, like you want something special.
Yeah.
So are you a fan of just like regular Maker's Mark, the 46, the cask strength, like any of that stuff? Like, are you a fan of, because some people may not know it. A lot of loyal listeners probably do. Makers is a wheated bourbon. So kind of like Weller's, it's going to be a wheated bourbon.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have any rye in it whatsoever.
Yeah.
And the regular private selection, it's a 70% corn mash bill. And I don't think that this comes across like a high corn content mash bill.
So 70%.
And then because it's also wheated, sometimes a wheated bourbon will come across a little bit sweeter than a rye bourbon. And because I like rye so much, I kind of miss the characteristics that rye brings to a bourbon.
Yeah.
So typically I'm not a big wheated bourbon fan. Like I'm not a huge Weller or Makers fan. It's just not my flavor profile, just because I love rye.
Yeah, I like Makers. I do like the 46. I think it's a nice bottle. What's the other one that they do? Cask strength. I like the cask strength.
Yeah, so you have Makers 46, Makers cask strength, Makers 46 barrel proof. And then there's the private selection, and then there may be a couple others.
Yeah, I like what they can do. The regular Makers is not one that I sip on neat, right? I just don't. I mean, it's something maybe on the rocks, or it's a mixer or whatever. But yeah, I like the 46. I like the cask strength. I do like some of the barrel picks that I've had. You know what I mean? I would love to try the Bourbon and Blondes one. Talk to them. May not be able to secure a bottle of it, but I mean, some of the ones I've had.
So with theirs, if their label has the same 5 staves available, if I remember correctly from the pictures, theirs uses 8 roasted French mocha staves.
Which one? This one?
The Bourbon and Blondes.
Bourbon and Blondes.
I believe theirs uses 8 of those staves.
Yeah.
This one uses 5. But yeah, so theirs I believe was 8 and then 1 and 1.
Okay.
And this one's 5, 4, and 1.
I got you.
So it'd almost be interesting just to like drink as much of this as we want to before we go to the 46 and almost hang on to it. And if by chance one of us gets one of the Bourbon and Blondes bottles, then like do a side-by-side.
Yeah. You want to pull that now? Do one more and then switch over.
You can do one more.
Do one more. He's going to do one. One for the road. All right, let's move on to the cigar here. As I'm breathing in this smoke coming off it. So La Aurora, we have covered before on the podcast, but just a quick review. They've been around since 1903. It's the Jimenez family, right? Let me pull this up here. But they have a very just huge history in the tobacco world. But dating back to 1903, and then they were doing at some point the first cigars with a ring. La Aurora places the first rings to the cigars made on red and gold, and so that was like a new thing for them in 1914. And then just it's a family thing here going on for decades and decades and decades. And then they also got more into a little bit of the cigarette tobacco. They were doing some of that stuff there as well. They had a new cigarette factory in 1963, and then shortly thereafter that, not shortly thereafter that, but years later, they actually did a deal. I just saw it with Philip Morris.
Okay.
I don't know if they sold off that. I mean, we did this. We went over this in the past.
Yeah, because we have previously featured the La Aurora 115 a couple of years ago. There was the 107 Nicaragua, which every time my dad comes into the Tinder Box, he always asks if we got that back in.
I got you. Yeah, so they had an agreement with Philip Morris from 1969 up until 2006.
Wow.
So they were basically exclusive right to manufacture and sale of Marlboro cigarettes in the Dominican Republic.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, I'm sure they made some money there.
You think?
I think they did all right. But then lately, so basically they've been doing a lot with what they've had as far as tobacco blends and everything else. But this one here, the Broadleaf, was introduced in 2012 as an additional blend to the original, I think 4 or 5. Yeah, the gold, the silver, the sapphire, the emerald, and the ruby. 5.
Isn't there a double barrel?
That's limited edition, but this came in 2012 here.
Okay.
And this was, originally in that Preferido number 2 size, comes in that gorgeous tube.
Oh, yeah.
It is a bit smaller than this cigar we have here. This is I think 6, and at the most, it balloons out to a 54.
Okay.
I believe. So if Jerry's still listening on this one, let us know if that's correct. But it starts like 33 or so ring gauge and ends in like a 33, 34. I mean, it's a dramatic figurado there.
Yeah.
And this is going to be where they had the ruby was a Brazilian Maduro. That was the darkest one, I think, leading up to this. And then this is a Connecticut Broadleaf. And the Broadleaf is over a Dominican binder and Dominican filler. And also in the filler, they have a bit of Nicaraguan as well.
Ah, okay.
So it is of the blends in the Preferido portfolio. I'm a huge fan of the Emerald. I'm a huge fan of the which I think is Ecuadorian Habano. It's Ecuadorian, and then you have the Ruby. I like a lot as well. This is definitely up there for me. And then I also like the double, the brown,
the double barrel. Yeah. I had bought one of the green Preferidos back when I found out I was so it was 6 months out of college. I had interviewed for a science lab here in town and got the call that I got the job offer. So I was like, yay. So I celebrated and I went out on my front porch. I was still living at home. Went out on the front porch and lit up the Emerald.
Yeah.
And then the next day they called me and rescinded the offer.
Jesus. If anyone else has any good news tonight, make sure to tune into the comments. So have you ever smoked the Emerald again, or was that the only time?
I haven't smoked it since, but then it's not because of that.
Okay.
I mean, so we were on the phone with Jerry before we went live. Like those tubes, they're not your regular cigar tubes.
Yeah.
They're like, they are high end. You can tell like there's definitely a lot of money into those tubes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, MSRP on the Preferido number 2 that comes in the tubes, I mean, you're talking what, low to mid 20s.
Mm-hmm. I
mean,
yes, it is a pricier cigar. I don't know the age on the tobacco, but I mean, it is that size. I know is not being the Vitola is not able to be rolled by just anyone. Obviously, with this size, this Vitola, or the especially number 2, it's just a little bit sharper of a taper there. This one, the number 1, it was originally a release for a shop called Michael's Tobacco, where they have multiple locations. in Texas. And apparently, talking with Jerry from La Aurora, this still isn't just a normal like release cigar you can find anywhere. When I was looking up some information, a little bit on the history of this cigar blend, this size particularly, you couldn't find many reviews, if any, and any shops online that had it, they were all out of stock and on back order.
Mm.
So this is something that we were able to get, through Tinder Box at Easton in Columbus, Ohio. At their 10 event, this was a special thing that Jerry was able to work out. So thank you, if you're still listening, to get this to the people that were attending the 10 event.
Nice.
Which is fantastic. They hooked us up with that, which was just great. And then the other ones that we gave to the general admission were the Nesta Miranda special selection, which is also Miami Cigar Company.
It's a great smoke. So,
yeah.
So the number one that we're smoking is a little bit bigger than the number two.
Correct.
But so if you were comparing cigar for cigar, that'd be a little bit higher price. But this didn't have the tube, so then it would be a little lower price. But there was a sampler at the 10 event where it was 2 of these and 2 La Auroras, or what were the other 2 cigars? There was another La Aurora. Nesta Miranda.
There were 2 of these and 2 Nesta Miranda, 5.5 by 54s.
Okay.
and it was a $25 sampler.
Holy shit.
So basically it was almost like buy one, get 3 free.
Yeah.
This one comes in MSRP, but again, it's a little tough because MSRP on this, it's kind of elusive on where you can get it, right? But I believe the actual MSRP, if you can get this cigar, is shy of $20. But again, when you get it in, you can see it marked that if you're sitting it right next to the smaller number 2, you're going to have to explain that from a retail standpoint that you're like, wait, that one comes in a tube. This one this one's bigger, but it's like $5 less. Like, I don't understand. So, I mean, I think that's just the like you said, the packaging, the tube, that's one thing. The Preferidos that are more not mass produced in a bad way, but like they're more available, mass available, right?
Jerry said if it was a regular product, it'd be around $20.
So there you go. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. So,
but I also think of it like the Monte Cristo White series. We kept getting this question for a while. The Torpedo, which was a 6 1/4 by 52, was like $1 more than the Churchill, which was a 7 by 56.
Right.
So even though it was a smaller cigar, it was more expensive. And people would always like, wait, why is that? Because it's a Torpedo. It's harder to roll a Torpedo. Yeah. You make less of them because it takes a lot more skill. Not as many rollers can make that cigar.
Same goes for this.
This is basically a Torpedo on both ends.
Yeah. Yeah. But again, I mean, the number 2 comes in the tubos that are gorgeous, and they're not just your normal like thin metal tubes. Like they are absolutely gorgeous. Not that is what you smoke, but I mean, just again, presentation. And also I like that they do that because I've seen, some boxes of other figurados that you'll have some breaking happening of the cigars in the box because of the way they're packaged. So by doing a very custom tubo for that's tapered on both sides as well, I haven't had in the almost 10 years of experience in the industry that I haven't had anyone say, oh, this one's broken inside.
I've never seen
so that's smart in itself. And it also comes in an 8-count box because, again, at that price tag, that's nice. You can give it as a gift in that tubo. You can give it as a 8-count box. So, hey, I want to get a box of those. This, when you can find it, you're looking at 25-count boxes. So, again, you're saving some money there. But again, to buy a box of 25, even at about $20 versus the 8-count. I mean, again, there's some logic behind the pricing differences.
Yeah.
And Ray Cheshire says that he was at the 10 event. He said he smoked them and absolutely loved it. Yeah. It's great.
So for those that watch this and may not be as familiar with cigars and what broadleaf is, what are some other names that do broadleafs that people might recognize?
Well, you've got some that are more common, that are like not the high end ones, like an Onyx from Altadis.
Okay.
That's going to be Connecticut Broadleaf. And then you also have some that you would possibly know a little bit higher end, like a Liga Privada number 9 has a Connecticut Broadleaf wrapper on it. What else? The Rocky Patel Sungrown Maduro has a Connecticut Broadleaf. It's used as right now, I think the Connecticut Broadleaf and also the Brazilian Maduro, whether it be Matafina or Arapiraca. You're going to have those being, and San Andreas is another one. San Andreas, probably Connecticut Broadleaf and San Andreas are going to be your more common Maduro used wrapper leaves right now on the market. But Connecticut Broadleaf, it is actually grown in Connecticut in that river valley there, and it's very hardy leaf. I mean, a lot of times it is that darker leaf, right? They do it in the sun grown. It's not shade grown in Connecticut. And
when they say broadleaf, like it really is, like it is a wider.
It's hardy. It's like a thicker in a sense. When I say hardy, it's from what I understand. I mean, it's really pliable. You can, you can stretch it out.
Because you've been there. You've been to the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's from what I saw, a little bit shorter plants. But again, it is broadleaf for a reason. Yeah. Is that it is a wider leaf. I like broadleaf. I know not everyone does. You do?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned the onyx being a broadleaf, and that's on the lower price range. Like that's going to be a $6, $7, $8 cigar, depending on size. Like I actually really enjoy that cigar. What's amazing about that cigar, like, so when you look at the broadleaf, like the one we're smoking, it's a very dark leaf, very hardy. Like you can see these little bumps in the leaf. Like it's a very hardy looking wrapper. And some people look at that and they're like, oh my gosh, that's got to be just a, knock you on your ass strong type of cigar.
Yeah.
But it's not. Like the Onyx is a medium bodied cigar. This La Aurora Black Diamond is going to be I would say just a little bit stronger than that, maybe.
Medium push. I mean, you're medium
this
bodied.
Is not
the retro hail's got a little bit of oomph to it, in my opinion.
Okay.
It's got a little bit of spice and pepper to it in the retro, but I would give this more of a medium, maybe medium plus.
Yeah. But like
using like steak terms, like medium push.
Yeah.
But
like if people saw this on the shelf, they would see the darkness of this wrapper and think that this was a very full body cigar that was going to, sit you on your ass. And it's not.
No,
it's
not.
A very hearty, very flavorful wrapper. And then I think especially utilizing primarily Dominican tobaccos with the binder and the filler. You said it's got just a little bit of Nicaraguan in there, but being primarily Dominican, like that's going to mellow it out a little bit. It's not going to be as bold and spicy as if this was an all Nicaraguan blend internally.
And Jerry is chiming in and says a smaller number 2 will be stronger because of that ring gauge, right? It'll emphasize the wrapper or whatever.
Right.
So a couple others, not to get off of that, but I think, with the traditional Dominican companies, I mean, Fuente uses broadleaf on a lot of their Maduros. It's Connecticut Broadleaf. I don't know I know you probably knew that name.
Chateau 858.
Yeah, anything that, and then you have the Ashton Maduros made by them. That's Connecticut Broadleaf as a straight up medium. When they're combining it with the Dominican filler binder, I mean, they blend it accordingly, and that's what I like about broadleaf. You can strengthen it up. I think it's a pretty versatile, from what I see on the market, it's a versatile wrapper leaf that you can blend to be a stronger blend and it'll go well, and you can also blend it to be a medium. You can't. I haven't seen any, but I mean, I don't think you can really successfully do a mild cigar. The Onyx is medium at best. But again,
I think that Ashton Maduro is more of a medium bodied as well. Like it's not.
It is. I'm saying you can't do mild. I have yet to see a broadleaf mild cigar.
It's too hardy and too flavorful of a wrapper to go on a mild cigar.
It just wouldn't go in the recipe, I don't think, very well.
Yeah, like that wrapper would, be just overpowering everything else in that blend.
What I like about these types of cigars that have it, and if you guys out there haven't really had a chance, or you steer clear of torpedoes, and especially you steer clear of figurados, because you just either don't really find the appeal, you like your more traditional, like, Corona, Robusto, Toro, Churchill. What I like about some figurados, this one included, is that, as you can imagine, and not only does it literally balloon out in the middle of it, but it does open it up. So you get a unique smoking experience with these types of unique rolls in the figurado, which is again, this is not just, a level 1 roller isn't usually assigned to this type of a product. I mean, this is something that it takes a bit of that, because the filler, and then with that the ring gauge dynamic changing,
Mm-hmm.
it does give you a kind of a more complex smoking experience. So I mean, that's something that even though you could probably have a really, not this one, but you could probably have a very basic blend that's not going to be a complex blend in like a Robusto. But if you do something like this, it'll give you a little bit of a journey there, you know, as far
because it's going to change from having, you know, less tobacco at the foot, more tobacco in the middle of it, and then less tobacco at the head. So it's going to change flavors because you're having to take out or add tobacco depending on where you are in that blend.
Correct.
We talked about that when we had the Oliva V Figurado.
Mm-hmm.
Like that starts out with just that little nipple on the end, and you got to be careful because especially with a cigar like this, you don't have to cut that much off of it because as it opens up, it'll draw just fine. Because we've seen some people where they're smoking a Perfecto or a Figurado, and at first they're like, "Oh, that's, you know, it's too tight. It's too tight of a draw," and so they want to cut more off. And then all of a sudden, it hits the fatter part of the cigar, and now it's too airy because now it's a fatter part of the cigar, and they just pull air out too quickly, too easily through it. So this one, you really don't have to cut a lot of it off, but it is nice that it does kind of change because you know, it starts out, it's kind of smooth, but then as you get to the meat of this cigar, with there being more tobacco in the middle of the body of the cigar, there's a lot more flavor going on.
There is, and there are some, you know, Figurados that just have, like you know, you said like nipple or whatever. I mean, at the very end, it's very, very tapered, like it's almost like a hard taper, and then into it's just like small. There are some people that just cut that off too because they don't even.
I have seen that. I have seen that.
You know, you can't get through. Jerry again from La Aurora says only a handful of rolling pairs can roll the Perfectos at the La Aurora factory. So, you know, to that point we were making is that this is again going to go into that. I mean, you think about that again, it's going to go into the cost. You have higher end rollers. You can't, you know, there is a bit of the business side of this that goes into the pricing. It's not just all the things you think about, but it's also the fact that it's like this is going to go to a certain level roller that they possibly could pay more. So there's more cost involved there.
The cigar brand that I used to work for, they had, when I went down there and did a tour of the factory, there were only 3 pairs that were rolling the cigars that they did in a double Perfecto like this. There were only 3 pairs rolling it. One of them was doing the one, it was a unique cigar that was kind of an extension where it had a pinstripe second wrapper on it. There was only 1 pair of rollers doing that cigar. And then you had the other 2 that were doing the regular.
You showed me the video of that.
I did. I recorded that video, and
that's very cool.
Yeah, and when you see that, like it you know, it definitely takes some time and a lot of skill to roll a cigar like that, and that particular company, that's why those cigars that were that double Perfecto like this, or double Figurado, whatever you want to call it, like they only came in 10 count boxes. They weren't coming in 20 count boxes because they weren't able to produce as many, because you only like I said, you only have 3 pairs of rollers actually making that cigar.
So I think there's also something that goes into it from, again, you know, when you have a 10 count box, once that cigar hits a 20 count, right, and you're sitting at $20+ per cigar, there is a bit of a sales aspect of it, is that you don't necessarily think like, well, we want to be able to have box buyers, but you know, if I've got a MSRP of over $20 and now I put it in a 25 count box,
now you're looking at $500.
I mean,
before any discounts.
And
that's going to be a harder sale.
There's a harder sale retail. There's harder sale online, obviously, because, you know, if you're trying to like, hey, I want to get some of these. I really love the La Auroras, and I'm not necessarily saying don't shop online, but for people that do, especially if there's no brick and mortar that they can support nearby, they're going to be like, well, my only options are I can get a 5 count that they're going to basically package loose and hopefully nothing's broken, or I can buy a box, but I'm going from basically, well, 5 count, you know, $80 to $100 to try the cigar that I really like, or I got to drop $500 to $600.
Yeah.
So now you go in that whole 10 count. And you're like, all right, 250, 200, whatever. Like, I mean, it's still a lot of money, but I mean, there is a bit of that marketing, I think, to that point, that a 20, 25 count. Now, Davidoff sometimes, I mean, we just got a box of 20 or 25 of the double R's.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a pricey box.
Yeah.
So,
well, and it's a pricey box for the retailer, but it's also, or a pricey box for the customer. It's also a pricey box for the retailer, because the retailer has to,
hey, yeah.
If this came in a 10 count box and they were, whatever the wholesalers cost, it's going to be less obviously than what the consumer's cost is. But because like the company I worked for, they came out with a cigar. It was going to be like a $10 cigar, which is not bad, but it was a unique size, and it came in a 50 count box.
Yeah, Cuban wheel.
Like, no, it was literally a crate, kind of like the Texas Lancero almost.
Yeah.
It came in a giant crate, and so my boss was like, "Hey, how come you haven't sold as many of these in your territory as some of the other territories?" I'm like, because none of the retailers in my territory want to drop $300 for one box of cigars.
Before we get off that note, too, I mean, again, that takes up a huge amount of real estate in a walk-in humidor as well. It's not displayable. Rocky Patel puts out the Edge in a 100 count crate or whatever, and it's like, for those,
I've seen that on shelves
again, but that takes up a lot of real estate.
Takes up a lot of real estate,
which is a bold move. Again, I mean, if you can get it on there, I mean, you're taking up someone else's possibly real estate there. I will say with this, the construction of the cigar, I'm of the opinion that this is a fantastic construction.
Oh yeah.
This is I mean, it's just like the smoke is billowing.
You would hope that from a $20 cigar.
I know, but it's not always the case, especially in a Perfecto like this.
Yeah. I haven't had any construction issues. It hasn't. Sometimes when you have a Figurado or double torpedo, if one side at the beginning isn't burning as well or as fast as the other, then as soon as you hit the body of it, like that difference will be highlighted even more.
Yeah.
But yeah, this one, it has absolutely stayed even throughout the whole cigar. So, I mean, I'm halfway through and I haven't had to touch it up. I had to relight a couple times, but that's because I was talking too much about the whiskey earlier. But no, just absolutely flawless construction. And I will say, in my experience with any of the Preferidos line, that is on par.
Yeah.
Like you talked about with them not being damaged because they come in that high quality tubo. I have not had one of these where they've burned unevenly or ran on a customer or anything like that. Like, obviously having fewer rollers, like it's got to be your top level guys, and they got to know what they're doing.
Correct. And I will say, for those that want to try this and, this blend or any of the other Preferido blends, and you don't want to drop $20-some on something that you haven't had before, they did release some of your more traditional sizes as well in these blends, in the Corona, the Robusto, the Toro, maybe some others. Jerry, if you're still listening, if you want to chime in there. But they brought those out, and honestly, the prices on those are average. They're more average priced. Yeah. So it is a great blend. It's something, but they brought it out. To my knowledge, it's the exact same blend. It's got the same bands on it. This one says Broadleaf. This is what they call the diamond, but I mean, it says Broadleaf on there. Like the red is a ruby, but on the band it says Maduro.
Okay.
So you'll see that, but they did release it. They came out, I don't know how long ago. It's been a few years now, that they came out with more of those traditional sizes that are coming in around that, to my recollection, like that $10-11 price point.
Okay.
So you've got,
but they're going to smoke a little differently because they're not
100%.
They're not in that Preferido size.
There's something to be said about the construction, the smoking experience, obviously, but the construction as well. I mean, I would imagine that when he says there's just a few pairs that are able to roll these, they're not rolling the Robustos.
Yeah.
Not saying they're going to be bad. I'm just saying you won't get what I was talking about when you have a Vitola like this, of that complexity that goes into the ring gauge going up and down, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, you're going to get that smoking experience a little bit different. So, if you do try, say, the Diamond, the Broadleaf in a Toro or a Robusto Corona, and you like it, I would encourage you to splurge at some point for the number 2 Preferido, or if you can get your hands on a number 1, awesome.
It's funny, on Saturday, I was talking with Brian, the owner of the Tinder Box, and somehow, for some reason, he had brought up a cigar. It was called the Egg. And I know the Tinder Box back in the day used to carry one. I actually smoked one when I was in college. It's like the most extreme version of a Preferido that you can get, because it's like a 44 or 42 ring gauge on the ends, but in the middle it's 2 inches in diameter. Like, it literally looks
100.
Huh?
That'd be like 100.
So 2 inches would be 128.
Yeah.
And it was a 5-country blend, but this, it's a very smooth, even transition to the center of it and back to the head. That one, it was literally like you took a Corona and shoved a chicken egg.
Novelty.
It was
a novelty.
It was.
Yeah. Ray Chester says he's got one in his humidor. Smoke it. Smoke it to try to.
But I remember Brian always talking about, like, people would smoke. He's like, there's no way that's got to burn evenly because it's so fat in the middle of that cigar.
No.
Going from so thin to so fat so quickly.
No.
It's a gradual transition. And I think that's why we have not had any construction or run issues whatsoever smoking this.
Mm-hmm. I do like this cigar. I like the blend. I've already said that before. And guys, thank you for chiming in. We got a good conversation going. Thanks also to some of the Facebook groups. I have noticed, I had someone today that actually came in. I haven't seen him probably since this time last year. His name's Chris. He came in the shop. He had gotten a gift card from his parents, and good guy. And he even asked me, he's like, "You still doing the podcast?" And I said, "Well, yeah." And he's like, "Well, I haven't gotten any I haven't seen it anymore." And I explained to him that this is why and all that stuff. But I did get some notifications. I appreciate. I'll throw them out here. Ohio Bourbon Hunters. Let's see what else is on here. Tri-State Bourbon Aficionados, Millionaire Cigar Club. So we had a handful that were approving it as we got started, which I know it's busy, and these guys get a lot of posts and they have the admin, approval on there. But I do appreciate that, because part of the enjoyment of this show is that we get some live participation. So I've seen some names on here. Che's out there. Cigar Rich is out there. Ryan Jones is out there. Brian Henson, Kevin Landers, Dave Gordon. I mean, so I hope you got Amy Ward Klein. You guys chiming in and what Josh Sizemore. You guys chiming in, checking it out. Yeah.
Or you could have just handed me your glass and I would.
Okay. But I appreciate you guys not only approving it earlier or whenever. I mean, it's great to have people listen in after the fact, but we do love it. Again, I mean, it's not something we're trying to promote anything, in a bad way. This is just fun conversation. And, we've got some guests lining up from distilleries and cigar companies in the upcoming week. So I'm looking forward to that. We got a local bartender that's been on before, Jesse Hubbard. He's coming on.
Nice.
Again, he's been doing some cool things lately, and he's got a topic at hand that actually was brought up a bit in the comments today that, we took it to the audience today. And he's got a topic that we're going to talk about that it'll be interesting to see that. It's more of the I'll have to look at how he put it, but it was more of like the men's mental health and stuff like that. So we'll see. I think he's been, working on some things, and I'm excited to have him on. So we appreciate you guys, chiming in, not only for the whiskey and the cigar part of it, but part 2 as well. So,
well, and what makes this podcast great and different from a lot of other whiskey or cigar podcasts out there is that live interaction.
Exactly.
We don't do any editing, and then the episode drops, 2 weeks later after we've, cleaned everything up. It's live, and so people can sit there and ask questions. And we see a lot of weeks where there's separate conversations going on just in the comment section. Guys back and forth while Steve and I and whoever our guest is are up here talking. And that's what's great about it.
I really liked it. Also, if you're on Facebook, just to kind of plug that again, not making any money off of that. It's just the Bourbon and BS community page. We're 1,500 members strong. And this last 2 weeks ago, when we had the Smoking Tent event in Columbus, Ohio, Tinder Box at Easton, we had people, and we talked about it a little bit last week, but like Sean Anderson, who's listening, never met Ray Cheshire. They talk all the time.
I never met Ray.
Bobby Crow didn't come in, but he's chiming in again tonight. But, we had Bobby Hirschman and Corey and Scott, from Philly, it's all because of this. Well, just a huge reunion. It was terrible on my sleep schedule and my liver, but I mean, it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun having you guys in. So, I mean, we appreciate the conversation, and every week, if you guys are available, I know we'd say 7:30, but it's always something. It's 7:30, 8 o'clock, and we're happy to have you guys be a part of this. At the end of part one, if this is your first time listening, this is something that's also available on iTunes and Spotify, and I am going to work my hardest to catch up on that. I know Spencer has been on the podcast before. He actually was asking, when are you going to upload it? And I said, I've been a little busy. I'm sorry. We have it available. We love the Facebook and the YouTube audience, but on the audio, definitely check it out and share that as well.
Spencer needs listening material for his drives.
I know.
And he always listens at 2x speed. Anyway, so hey, Spencer, slow it down.
I say, well, why don't you just call me and we can talk while you're driving? He says, just post the podcast. Anyways, this is the time as we roll out our round out part one. It's the whiskey, cigar, and the pairing rating. So for the first time listeners out there, we've got 10 being the best, right? It's out of 10, 3 different ratings: the whiskey, the cigar, and the pairing. So we're going to be rating the OHLQ pick, the Caramel Mocha Bomb of the Maker's Mark private selection. I think in part 2, we're going to switch over to the 46 here, right? So we save some of this here.
Yeah.
And then the cigar, we have the La Aurora. It's the Preferido Diamond or the Broadleaf, and it's the number 1 size that we're smoking, 6x54 or 56. I can't remember. But again, and then the pairing between the two of them. Nate, you go ahead, go first on that.
All right, so on the Maker's Mark OHLQ All-Star Collection Private Selection Caramel Mocha Bomb. It's a mouthful. If I was rating the whiskey just on the juice itself, I would give it a 7. If I factor in that $70 price tag for this bottle, I give it a 6.5. Because
say those again.
So just what's in the bottle alone, not counting the price, it's a 7 for me. Coming in at a $70 bottle, I was expecting, like we talked about before we went live, and even after we went live, I was expecting a little bit more sweetness from this whiskey because of that name.
Yes.
Caramel Mocha Bomb. Like, I'm just expecting something really sweet, a little chocolatey, and this just wasn't it. Primarily got, that oak and a little vanilla.
Right.
So I was a little disappointed in that. Still had a good flavor. I think $70 is reaching if this was something that was regularly available. We haven't cracked it yet, but the Maker's 46, now they call it the French Oaked. That's a $35 bottle. That's half the price. So I think for the flavor between these two bottles, the Maker's 46 coming in half the price, I think, is a better value.
Mm-hmm.
The Caramel Mocha Bomb was definitely different. It's not your regular Maker's Mark, obviously, but it left me wanting more. Like, I was expecting more out of this bottle, and I wish it was even the viscosity of it. Like, it just comes across thin on the palate.
Yeah.
And I would expect it with a name like this, especially being at 110.5 proof, I would expect it to be a little thicker and oilier on the palate, and just wasn't there.
I'll comment on that, but I think 110.5 is surprising on the bottle when you actually sip on this.
Yes, it doesn't come across like a 110. This
90?
This comes across something under 100 for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, and you've been, some of those blind tastes that I've done with you in the cigar shop on Saturday night after we close, you have been like dead on some of those proofs. And Josh, give him credit, like, he's been pretty close too.
Yeah.
But you've been within like 1 or 2.
Not always right on the
points.
notes, but I'm usually right on the strength of it.
Yeah. I don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing, but that's damn impressive. Because the first time I brought,
you don't pick bottles based on proof.
Because the first time I brought the new label of the 46, the French Oaked, Josh guessed 100. You said 94, 95, and it's 94. So I'll give you props to that.
Thank you.
I'll give you props to that. That's amazing.
It's not too often.
Even that wise man I brought in, you said it was 100. It was 100.8. Like
I don't do the decimals unless I'm rating things.
Yeah.
How about the cigar there? The La Aurora Diamond Preferido.
I'm giving the cigar a 9.
Nice.
This is a very good cigar. I love the flavor. What really impressed me about this cigar, because I've never smoked this before, is it's got that broadleaf flavor. I'm someone who I do enjoy broadleaf. I know not everyone enjoys, especially people that have been in the tobacco world for a while or smoked cigars for a long time.
Yeah.
Not everyone enjoys broadleaf. I know someone at the Tinder Box is not a huge fan of broadleaf. But I do like the flavor on this cigar. And what I like even more, it's not necessarily an extremely bold cigar.
Balanced.
Like exactly. It's very balanced. It's got a lot of flavor. It's a complex smoke. And I probably would prefer this Preferido size because of the complexity over some of the more traditional sizes.
Yeah, but like, to that point, it's if you have the Robusto or the Toro available and you're just looking for a daily, or not daily, but you're looking for something that I don't want to drop $25, $20 on it, but I like the blend. You like the flavor of it. You're going to get that out of the other sizes. They're the same blend, Jerry. Confirm that. It's just, again, to your point, not as complex. How about the pairing?
The pairing, I'm actually going to give the pairing an 8 in between the two, because as I'm smoking the cigar and then coming back to the whiskey, it actually adds a little bit of sweetness to the whiskey that wasn't there before, that we were kind of expecting from it.
Okay.
So I actually think the cigar brings more out of the whiskey than the whiskey on its own. Yeah.
Tim says, Tim Dodge out there, a cigar that takes you on a journey. I used that term earlier. I was talking about the complexity of, the Vitola, and nobody has to say a word. I mean, it's definitely something nice there. So for me, the whiskey, I'll give it a 7.5. I like the effort. I don't, again, I give it a 7.5 because I think I know maybe what they're going with. If you're going to do that many, 11 different in a year, you're going to do 11 different private selection barrel picks from the same distillery. You're going to have to pick some things that are different. We had Amy Schertzinger from McClellan's on. She did the Weller Foolproof, the number 1, and then she did number 2, which I don't think you've ever had.
I've not had the number 2 pick.
The number 1, the first barrel pick she did, just for example of you guys, just to do 2 different ones. Loved it. Just super balanced. It was just this wonderful flavor. And then when I was at McClellan's and she's like, hey, we have the second barrel pick. And I said, oh, let me try that. Spicy, like in your face. I'm like, holy shit, this is so different. She's like, well, I didn't want to just pick a similar one. I had to like have contrast between the two. So I can appreciate what they're doing. If we had all 11 of them lined up here and just had samples of each of them, calm down.
Okay. I was like, ooh.
So like 3-ounce samples of each of them. No.
Holy shit.
I'm going to like the last one. No, I think that I appreciate what they're doing, right? I don't like the name. I think I don't get that. Like I said, maybe it's just because we're outside and, we're in the garage. I had to empty the can over here that had a bunch of ashes, when we were smelling it before we went live.
I'd have called this one the barn burner. Just because it was
Barnyard Buster.
There you go. That's another one. Just because it was so oaky. I would have gone something like that. Something that didn't make you think it was going to be super sweet. Not
7.5. It's got that sharpness. It's not bite, but it's something. I can't really describe it, but 7.5 on that. The cigar I'm going to give, I'll agree with you on the 9. I think I like what they did with this cigar. The construction is so far for me flawless.
Absolutely.
It is that complexity based on the Vitola, to Jerry from La Aurora and Miami Cigar Company. I mean, he even stated that there's only a handful of rollers that can roll this Vitola, and there's a reason, because they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
So interestingly enough, believe it or not, when you have that number 2 we were talking about in this, they come in those tubos, 8-count boxes, very secure. We got these in 25-count bundles. And it wasn't just a squared off bundle. It was kind of like this trapezoid because of the
good word. There you go. There you go.
I took geometry. That's geometry, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Calculus. But no, I was very impressed, and we've had a ton of good feedback from this.
Like this
Doug
was
Sifford says that the Elijah Craig Great Scots on the shelf probably would go great with that cigar. You're right, Doug. Thank you very much. Doug was on a few weeks ago with the McFly and the Great Scott barrel pick of Elijah Craig, which you're probably not wrong. I'm going to grab that in the intermission. Maybe try a little sip of that.
You don't think that would be too strong for this? Well, no, because we drank that even though it was 127. It didn't come across like it's super strong.
Agreed. So that being said, the pairing. So I had 7.5 and I had a 9.
Yep.
I'm going to say that the pairing's back down to a 7.5, and here's why. Because where you're getting more sweetness, and maybe it's that I haven't had enough water, even though I've had like 2 glasses, I think, since we got out in the garage, it's kind of drying me out a little bit.
Okay.
You're saying more sweetness. For me, if I hear sweetness, I'm thinking it's going to kind of my mouth's watering a little bit. You know what I mean? Like,
okay.
But, you know, for me, I'm kind of getting this. It's not that cotton mouth, like severe dryness, but it's kind of thirsty.
Yeah, I get that.
You know what I'm saying? Like it kind of is. It's kind of it's like this a bit of dryness. So it's not the best drink and smoke experience for me. So that's where I'm back down to what I say, an 8,
7.5 on the pairing.
7.5. Yeah, I mean it's this. I would not pair these two. And we did take a couple sips of the private selection Maker's Mark here beforehand. It might honestly go better with the Reserva Real. You know, you'd have that. The whiskey could maybe travel a little bit more, and it wouldn't be. I'm not saying the cigar overpowers it, but it's just something is button heads a little bit here for me.
It's probably getting so much oak from the whiskey with the flavor profile of a broadleaf.
Could be.
Like those two may not go that great together.
They stand up against each other, but it's something about it. It's not really a good marriage here between
I think with a broadleaf, you need a whiskey that's more oily, something that's going to coat your palate a little bit more.
Possibly. All right. So with that being said, we're going to roll into part 2. We're going to go to the audience. We've had a couple. I'm going to try to scroll back. If you've made suggestions, go ahead and hit them again if you want to copy your comment on there. But we are going to the audience for some topics, questions, talking points, whatever you want to do on part 2. And so I'm looking forward to that. We'll have a quick intermission. Might actually try just a sip of that Elijah Craig. And Doug Sifford out there.
Oh, you already have another glass. I guess I would need to grab another glass.
I'm just saying I'm kind of prepared.
I asked if you want
the water.
I asked.
Chug the water. You got a glass right there. Here we go. All right. While he's chugging, I do want to thank patreon.com/bourbonbs podcast. That's you guys for the monthly contributions. We've had some long-time people out there. Sean Hurley's one of them. Sean, if you're listening tonight or you listen after the fact, we do have a package coming out to you. Not only stuff that you won on the podcast, but he's also placing an order from across the country. Appreciate that with Tinder Box at Easton. If you guys want to do the same, just reach out to me. Ryan Jones is also placing an order from Illinois. That's one of the reasons that we do this, to also hook up you guys with. If you don't have a brick and mortar that you guys want to, that you can get to wherever you're at, or if you want to support our sponsor and where we're based out of is Tinder Box at Easton, Columbus, Ohio, go to the post office about once a week. Bear with us. We're not Amazon. We're not an online company, but we got some good stuff and we do our best to package things up for you. But yeah, appreciate that with the continued support on Patreon from those guys like Sean as well. If you want to do a one-time contribution or buy us a bottle in a matter of speaking, Venmo at Bourbon and BS. We appreciate you guys doing that. And then also Tinder Box at Easton, which we just mentioned. Thank you for the La Aurora Preferido, number 1 of the Diamond, the Broadleaf. Altadis USA, we're going to be smoking the Romeo Julieta Reserva Real, one of my favorite mild blends, especially from Altadis. I just absolutely like something about it, like that more than the 1875. Which is more medium body.
Me too.
Just more, for me, it hits my palate better. So thank you, Josh Bentley. Congrats on your promotion. Paul Waller, thanks for the continued support. Maria as well. Everyone over there, thank you very much for the continued support. Love the banner behind us. And be a Cigar Company. Gold and silver are available through the Tinder Box at Easton, or just reach out to us. And Ryan Jones says, shop local-ish, buy local-ish. Exactly. It's like we're in your living room right now. And if you want some of the shirts, like we have the blue podcast, the green one, I saw someone I think did buy it. I got an alert from Buy Jack that I think someone bought the green one tonight. So if you're out there
Awesome.
who got it before it's gone, we're going to have some new colors of the 3/4 sleeves. We got that hoodie, the black camo, before it gets, spring, be perfect for that. This type of like nights, throw on that black camo.
Because it's not super heavy.
I had a guy come in the shop and I had it on. He's like, "Oh, Bourbon and BS, you know that podcast?" And I'm like, I've heard of it. So check that out, buyjack.com/Bourbon and BS. Thank you guys very much for the support. Happy Whiskey Wednesday. Stay tuned. Stay with us during the intermission for part 2. Cheers.
Cheers.
He actually said, he's like, "Are you a part of it?" I'm like,
he's only the S.
Yeah. Thanks for. He's like, "Yeah, I listened to it
for all 4 years."
Cool.
Yeah, it's in your garage, for crying out loud.
Yeah. Ryan Jones says, "Not my living room, but you're in my bar/lounge." Perfect.
So it's funny. I actually had a customer call into the shop on Sunday, and apparently he had gotten a bag of cigars, and he actually called. He goes, "There was this one cigar that, like, maybe if I describe the band to you, you'll know what it is. Are you able to do that?" I'm like, "Well, I've done it before, and I've been in the industry. I've been in the industry for a while. Like, I'll give it a shot." And I was like, "What did the band look like?" He goes, "Well, it had a B and an S."
Never heard of it. Let me show you a good cigar.
I was like, "Oh yeah, that's the BS. It's our house cigar."
It's trash. Don't do it. Don't smoke another one.
Oh no, he absolutely loved it.
I know.
That's why he was calling about it. Yeah, that was funny. All right, I'll grab that other bottle.
All right. And for those, like I said, out there, if you guys want to look in the comments, I know Kevin Landers had one that was it was Ukraine, Russia based, so we can talk about that. That's good right there. Thank you. And then we've got some other ones here. Jimmy Scales. I don't know if you're listening, but he's took a picture as well. Decided to smoke this one. He's got a picture of the La Aurora we're smoking. And
he was at the 10 event, so it's probably something that he grabbed while he was at the 10 event.
Yeah, well, it's a picture at the Tinder Box because I see our cutters and lighters underneath. So appreciate that. So Jimmy, if you're on, let us know what you think of the cigar. Yeah, so we got Gina out there. She had a question for us, and so this will be fun. If you guys want to, like I said, if you have any other questions, if you had one out there before, I know even Bobby Crow was saying something out there. I was trying to translate, like, favorite color, I think was one of them. Is that it? Right there. Still don't know what the stars are. He says it's something that it goes towards the podcast. Like if you get so many stars, it'll. Well,
and then you can also pin, like by giving star, you can pin your comment.
Okay,
that's what it says on.
He gave 500 stars. He gave
1,000 stars, 50 stars.
Mic drop. That is TikTok. Which, by the way, I've got someone. Did I tell you that I've got a TikToker that's going to be a guest on here? He's actually my ex-wife's cousin.
I didn't know where you were going with that.
I don't know where I'm going with it either, but we'll find out. Sean Wilkinson, normally in the garage. He's in Venice Beach right now on his 2-week tour out there. So
he's working, but
he will be working. So
just not right now.
Yeah, he's out there with
let us know
family.
Let us know how 630 is treating you.
Pretty nice.
Yeah. So the Great Scott with this cigar.
Doug, if you're out there, Doug Sifford, who was on again from Oscar, what do you think? Yeah, that's the sweet spot.
Yeah,
that's a good bottle, man.
Again, that's a bottle. It's a single barrel Elijah Craig coming in at 127 proof. It does not drink like a 127.
Like that. That's dangerous, right?
Just
there.
like that one we had when I first showed up. It was a 131. Doesn't drink like a 131. This is a 110. It drinks more like a 90 to 95.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
As Doug says, great bourbon. No joke. Thank you again for all the support on that, Doug.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah. There's a guy who brought 2 bottles of whiskey and 3 boxes of cigars just for a podcast. That's awesome.
Welcome back anytime.
Exactly.
Good conversation also, but you know, for those other guests out there,
step up your game.
No, stop. No. It was good. I loved having Doug on in the garage. I think he enjoyed it. He said he did. And,
yeah.
Great guy. And
well, he's one of those guys in the cigar world that like he's done podcasts before, you know, sometimes we've had Eric Espinoza, we've had Ricky Rodriguez, we've had Rocky Patel, Alan Rubin. Like we've had a bunch of these names in the cigar industry on the podcast. And every time we finish an episode, the one thing they always say, every single one of them, is that's not what I was expecting. Like, it's not your normal cigar podcast because, we talk about the whole part that we're getting ready to get into. We talk about life. We talk about stuff. It's not just geeking out over cigars. And we've also gotten that when we've had people in the whiskey industry. We've had the guys from High Bank Distillery here in Columbus. We've had Greg, the owner and founder of Watershed, Aaron Harris, who's the new head of a distillery for Watershed. We had someone who represented Middle West Spirits on several years ago. And yeah, it's kind of the same thing with each of them. Like, they went into it expecting a podcast dedicated to whiskey or dedicated to cigars, but yet it's not just about that. It's about both of them. But then we go into the part 2 aspect, which is very different. And sometimes they're almost caught off guard when we do that part 2. But that's what makes it, kind of lighten the mood. Even though it's a serious conversation, it still lightens the mood because it makes you feel like you're just hanging out in a cigar shop. And that's what the whole point of this is. You said the audience made Nick Perdomo. Oh, that's right. We did. Yeah. Yeah. So we had Nick Perdomo on remote sometime last year. And Sean Anderson, who's part of the community and was up here for the 10 event.
Yeah.
He talked about a very personal story with him where, he was over in the Middle East and was getting medevaced out of an area. And while he's on the helicopter being medevaced out, he had a cigar in his pocket because he always went on mission with a cigar. And he told Doc, he's like, I need to smoke the cigar. I need to have a couple puffs off the cigar. And the medic grabbed the cigar, and because of what had happened, the cigar was kind of busted, and they literally broke off the busted part, threw it out the helicopter, let him light up what was left. He took 3 puffs off of it, and the medic goes, "All right, that's enough." Grabbed it and threw it out, and it worked for him. And it was a Perdomo. So when Sean Anderson was on the podcast telling that, or he was commenting because Nick was in the Nick. I
put the comment up on the screen.
Right.
And, yeah.
Nick Perdomo was on the podcast remote. Sean put that in the comments and talked about that story. And yeah, because Nick was also a military person.
Navy,
he was in the Navy.
Yeah.
And when he got out of the Navy, he got into the cigar industry. Well, no, first he did
regardless.
Air traffic control.
Right. Here we go.
But yeah, it definitely made him tear up.
Yeah.
It's that whole personal connection.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. All right, let's roll into part 2 here. We've got some comments here. I agree, Tim out there. Yeah, he best conversations have with close friends after they close the shop up. So yeah, absolutely. If you guys have, like I said, any topics, comments, or anything else you want us to cover in this second part, we'll cover what we can, and then hopefully we can table some for another week here when we need some. Honestly, we always are looking for topics. We're looking for guests. We're looking for a lot of things. So,
well, and that's what was cool when we had that rep from Bardstown Distillery.
Yeah, in
the shop a few weeks ago. He talked about recently when he was on a podcast, in the episode he talked about. I'm like, I'm gonna note that down because I'm gonna note that as a topic for us to do one day.
Good.
Because he talked about trying to get someone from their company possibly on the podcast because he doesn't normally cover Ohio.
I got you.
But he was filling in, so but maybe we'll get him. Who knows?
We'll have to reach out. We're trying to set him up here. All right, quick moment of silence. Nothing for anything serious other than just so I can track this when I go back in the audio. Welcome back to the Bourbon and BS podcast, everyone. This is episode 214, I believe.
Yes.
We're still figuring that out here as we're halfway through it. But, thank you guys for tuning in. Part one, we went over the Maker's Mark private selection caramel mocha bomb that Nate brought here. It's an OHLQ, or Ohio State pick, 1 of 11. So we reviewed that, as well as the La Aurora Diamond Preferido number 1. And so thank you very much to not only Jerry from La Aurora, but also Tinder Box at Easton, one of our sponsors. We appreciate that. For some reason the mouse keeps going out. I love technology. I know I'm getting that age now that I just like I don't like technology anymore. It's just pissing me off on a regular basis.
Did I ever tell you a story how I met Jerry?
No, go ahead.
He and I interviewed for the same job.
Oh, there you go.
And I beat him out for the job, but we had to actually share a cab back to the airport.
You did.
And then I got the job. And then a month later, he got the job with La Aurora. Worked out well for Jerry.
Congrats, Jerry. Patreon.com/BourbonandBS podcast. That's you guys out there. Thank you very much for all the support. Check that out. There's 3 different tiers. And he says, haha, Jerry, it's still listening. Fantastic. But you're doing a podcast in my garage. So that didn't work. If you want to do a one-time contribution or buy us a bottle and you want us to review it and join us, on the podcast, that's also an option. If you want to, we're always open depending on schedule. But Venmo at Bourbon and BS. And then also thank you to Tinder Box at Easton for the La Aurora by way of my La Aurora cigars. I keep saying Miami because I say Jerry from Miami Cigar Company more often. But
yeah.
Anyways, thank you very much, Tinder Box at Easton, Columbus, Ohio. Very much appreciated of the support. Altadis USA, we're going to be lighting up. You're still smoking the La Aurora, as am I, but the Romeo Julieta, the Reserva Real, is on deck for the second cigar of the night. And Altadis, fantastic support. Not only continued support, but also the second featured cigar as well. So thank you, Josh Bentley, and everyone at Altadis for the continued support. BS Cigar Company, thank you for support. Gold and silver are available right now. 3 sizes each, 1 from Plasencia, 1 from Espinosa. Fantastic cigars. And if you like what you see on the screen, shirt-wise, that is.
Oh.
The green, no. The green one you have on there, Nate, the Kelly Green, that is the charity shirt that is going to be pulled off here this week. Not off of Nate, off the website. And I've got the blue podcast shirt. We also have some BS swag on there, some 3/4 sleeves going to be updated and everything else. But we're going to have some great stuff on there if you guys want to support the podcast and rock the gear. Seeing a lot of that at the 10 event and just around. So appreciate that. We'll get another charity shirt up there here soon, as soon as we figure out what we want to do.
There were so many people rocking Bourbon and BS gear, and
yeah,
I know Sean Anderson was rocking the pink shirt.
Yeah, and you got Josh Bentley; he was rocking the green, and
underneath
so was
his
Lou.
jacket. Yeah,
Lou, his father-in-law, was up here from Cincinnati wearing the green one as well. So I see that our connection's a little bit off. Thank you, Spectrum, for continued lack of support.
Wait, I thought it was WoW. Did you switch?
I had to switch.
Oh
no, it is WoW. Thank you, Spectrum. My bad. You're not listening anyways.
Yeah.
All right, part 2. We went to the community page and
I thought
the
about that earlier
page.
when you said it. I was like, wait a minute, when did you switch?
I need to go to Spectrum again. This is fantastic. Cool. All right, so do we want to do a light one first? Do we want to do a more in-depth one? Do we want to do a serious one? Nate, it's up to you.
Dealer's choice, really. I mean,
well, you're the dealer.
Well, I mean, let's start light. Let's start light. Right. Let's start off on a positive note.
All right. I don't know if this is related to what was at the Oscars or not, but John Federley asked, can a joke go too far? That was his question.
I'm guessing there is a reason why he asked that.
I don't know, but we can handle it whatever way. He commented on the
something with the Oscars, maybe.
Oscars, yeah. I don't know. Can a joke go too far, Nate?
I think it can.
And audience, if you want to chime in.
I think a joke can go too far. I think it depends on who the joke is targeting and what the subject is. Uh, there are some things that shouldn't be joked about. There are some people that you shouldn't joke around with because they may not have, they may not understand that it's a joke. Um, there's a fine line between joking around with someone and bullying someone.
Okay.
There. I know I had once called out someone who every time a customer came in, there was another person that would always try and get that person engaged in a conversation, but it wasn't to have a conversation. It was specifically so that way they could poke fun at that person.
Yeah.
But that person didn't know that they were the butt of the joke. And so I actually called that person out because it was every time that person would come in, there were some people that would start ragging on that person, but that person didn't know they were the butt of the joke. For whatever reason. There are different reasons why some people may not realize that. It may go over their head. They may not have the capacity to understand that they're the butt of the joke. It depends.
Okay.
This person, I believe, may not have the capacity to understand that the people are talking to them so that way they can make fun of them.
All right. So
there's a difference between joking with someone and making fun of a person.
Correct. Yeah. I can see that.
And so I think that person, the customer had maybe gone a little bit too far because it was an every time this other customer came in type of thing.
Yeah.
It wasn't necessarily someone who would say something and stand up for themselves. Like, I don't think this person would be confrontational enough to the point where they would actually say something.
Okay. I think I agree with Doug. Answer is yes. A joke can go too far. Your comment about ribbing or bullying, if it gets to the bullying aspect, that's blatant. I don't take joking or having a good time, in a sense of like in a playful manner. If you're flat out making fun of someone at their expense, then that's a problem, especially if it's not give and take.
If the other person's not laughing with you,
that's a bit on them. But if you just keep at it, then I think it's going too far. I think in the current culture that we're in, like the comedians, like that was the hot topic this week, right? Of like, Chris Rock, Will Smith. If you get pissed off at a comedian, you've got issues. Like, I know that was a different circumstance, but it's like if you go to a stand-up comic and you are triggered or offended and you go off on that and you just want to like they are a comedian. If you don't like them, leave.
Yeah.
Right. Same thing of a situation in a sense to a point. If you don't like a certain circumstance or an environment that you feel uncomfortable and you feel like someone is making fun of you or bullying you, then yes, the joke went too far. It is, in my opinion, up to you to, especially as you get older in age, if you're not threatened physically, then fucking say something. And that is not saying that everyone's expected to do that, but at some point there has got to be someone, hopefully, in your life, in that room, in that group, somewhere that is like, hey, I don't know. Like, you don't just retaliate. You just say, pull him aside. Hey, I don't think he realizes that you're making fun of him, or he doesn't know how to respond, but I can tell he told me he didn't like it. She didn't like it, whatever it is. And then it went too far. Oh, sorry. You know what I mean? Like, not a big deal. There should be, when you're telling a joke, that's one thing. If it's like an offensive joke, know your audience. If you offend someone, or if you're that person that's offended, I don't think the joke went too far. I think that you just didn't enjoy that. And yes, it could be a negative thing towards race, sex, disabilities, you know what I mean? Like some of that stuff. I'm not saying they're okay to say, but it's like if a joke went too far, only if, for me, is if there is a making fun / getting to that bullying aspect of it.
Well, so
if you don't agree with it, you think it's a tasteless joke, fucking say something and just move on. Like, it's like, don't, we're in that era of, cancel culture. And it's like someone said something, 10 years ago, that joke didn't go too far. It just didn't age well. Or now you say something. It's just, I don't know. I think that people are hypersensitive to some of this stuff anymore.
What's your opinion on what Chris Rock said?
I think he's a comedian. And I don't know if he knew that
Jada had alopecia.
Yeah. But again, I mean, it's like it could have been a tasteless joke and some booze, but people laughed, including Will Smith. And then seconds later, he went up and actually physically assaulted and battered another individual on live television and then sat back down and won an award minutes later. Okay, joke went too far for their two people, the family, out of millions of people watching. And Chris Rock could have had his blowback after the fact, but it did not, like hitting someone else over a poor taste joke, or even like someone that's offending someone. We're not on a playground. We're not like, this is real life. And especially in this oversensitive society and culture we're in right now, is that you're telling me that the person that actually took to blows because someone offended them and something they said, that they're okay to just continue on life. So that means that I can be in a fucking store and someone says something that's a complete stranger, that they offend someone I'm with, a friend, a significant other. I can just go up and just like punch that person and I'm not going to get arrested.
Right.
So that's what that is portraying to the people that are watching. If someone says something mean to you and your feelings are hurt, you can actually physically hurt that person with no repercussions. No.
Yeah.
That's not okay. That's not okay.
One of the follow-ups that I've heard or seen multiple times during this week since the Oscars was, so he was offended that someone made fun of his wife's haircut, but not offended when his wife was banging other men.
Yeah, well, that's a separate issue. You know what I mean?
I know, but it's like, at what point do you choose to be upset? And like you said, there's that footage of when Chris Rock initially told that joke. Will Smith was laughing, his wife not so much, and then he's like, "Oh shit!" Like, and then went and did something. Like, wait, you were laughing, and then now you're not. Like,
No one felt sorry for me when I went bald. There you go. Sorry, Jada and Will Smith, if you're listening, but
But again, like,
deal with it.
Again, what you're like, it's someone who made their living originally as a stand-up comedian.
Look,
there's someone who is in the industry as a comedic actor. You don't see that person in drama roles.
Look, I'm of the opinion that yes, you can be offended by it, you can do all that stuff, but it's like joking went too far. Yeah, okay. Say that they were of the opinion that Chris Rock's joke went too far. The
Don't
rest
laugh
of that,
at it.
Yeah, just get on fucking Twitter, get on whatever, and try to like be aggressive that way. But
or talk to him during the commercial break,
whatever it is. But and thank you, Doug. You look good, bald. I don't know if that's me or Jada, but Bobby says this is the topic. No, it's not the topic.
We'll have multiple topics.
Bobby. Yeah, this was can a joke go too far? This is the first of many. So, Bobby, if you have a talking point or anything else, please chime in. We can move on. But yeah, if she had a disease that she was dying from, and they made a joke,
yeah,
everyone's got an issue with that.
No one makes many.
She's losing her hair.
Yeah,
there are bigger problems out there. I'm sorry, I went through
jokes.
it because I went bald. So yeah, I wasn't offended by it. Anyways, oddly enough, Bruce Willis, G.I. Jane, Demi Moore, Bruce Willis now has dementia. That's not something you joke about.
Yeah.
There you go. Unless he wants to joke about it.
Aphasia. Yep.
Whatever. Let's go with this. Can someone be both an introvert and an extrovert? There you go, Bobby. If you're listening right now, let's see what you have to say about this one here, because I think this is something, not something that's pertaining to him, but this is something that this is a wider range topic here. Can someone be both an introvert and an extrovert? Perhaps an extrovert only in certain situations.
Yes.
And again, I apologize about the video feed. I don't know what's going on with the internet right now. We had great internet connection for an hour and a half, and now here we are. Hopefully, you can still hear us.
No, yeah,
I can't see us very well, which you're welcome.
I think with some people, my wife said they're called ambiverts.
Ambiverts.
Yeah. No, I think it depends on the situation. There are some people that are more comfortable in certain situations, and they'll be more open and outgoing in those situations. And then other times they're very reserved and laid back, and they don't say a whole lot.
Yeah.
For example, I know my wife, if she were to come into the Tinder Box, she's got enough of a sense of humor, that she would hold her own in the Tinder Box. It would also help her confidence that I'm there to stick up for her if I had to. But I've actually witnessed her stick up for herself at times and make other people blush in the shop because of something she said. But then again,
that's what she said.
There have been other situations where she's very, very reserved and kind of laid back. There was one, it was a couple of years ago. I had to help a friend of hers move some furniture and ran into someone who knew you. They were actually a roommate of your previous roommate at your old house.
Okay.
And because I had mentioned that I worked at a Tinder Box, they're like, "Oh, do you know Steve?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, I know Steve. He's the GM at the Tinder Box. Of course I know Steve. He's my boss."
Cheers.
And they're like, yeah, I went to college with his roommate. So within 30 seconds of meeting this gentleman, like, he and I already are friends. And after we got done moving the furniture, my wife's like, "How is it you can meet someone and 30 seconds later, like, you guys are talking like you're best buds and have known each other for years?"
Right.
She can't do that. Like, that's just not her forte.
Yeah,
but at the same time, there are certain environments that, like, if we're at the barn, because everyone there is like-minded and has a similar interest, she can talk with all those people all day long till she's blue in the face and I'm sitting in the corner bored. But I will find a way to make a conversation with those same people.
Right.
Even though we don't share the same interest, I will at least make myself comfortable and just start talking about whatever and fit in.
Okay.
But yes, I do think you can be introvert and extrovert, but I think it depends on the situation. Some people are like that. Some people are introverted all the time. Some people are extroverted all the time. Like Bobby Hirschman I'm going to go out on a limb and say he's an extrovert all the time. Like I have seen the videos where Bobby goes to a bar and just starts dancing to the music. And he will, if anyone out there is dancing, preferably a lady,
doesn't matter,
Bobby will start dancing with that person. As long as if that lady has a guy, he's not going to kick his ass. Bobby will dance with that person. Okay. Bobby's a very outgoing individual.
He is.
But he's also a very nice individual.
And I'm interested in what the comments, and so we do have a couple on here, and I'll put this. Doug Sifford says, when bourbon is involved, yes, that's one. Yes. Jerry says introverted, extrovert. Yes, indeed. Extroverted in comfortable settings. And that's kind of what you're commenting on there, Nate, as far as that goes, is that, when you're more comfortable, it's not, I don't know if that's as much of an extrovert unless there's that, it's complete strangers, but you have the common hobby or interest, right?
Mm-hmm.
I look at it as, we've had a show before. I think Tim and Nicholas the Third were on
SWAT.
That was SWAT, wasn't it? Good call on that one. I'm thinking. So, anyways, I look at the disc personality. There's a lot of different things. We've talked about that before. Where I remember someone was talking about their work culture, as they call them, like different colors. But I'm going back to the driver influencers, steady and compliant. And with that being said, you typically have like a natural and adapted personality. And I think sometimes that you're naturally maybe an introvert or an extrovert, but with some work, you can actually improve on that, right? So whether or not you're comfortable at it, but I mean, I think naturally you're going to be either an introvert or an extrovert. And yes, I mean, sometimes it's introvert doesn't necessarily mean you're a wallflower. It doesn't necessarily mean that you just stay at home and not go out. It means that, you're just not as outgoing, if you will. You're more, internal with a lot of things. But I will say that, like, for example, when I first went to back in my previous career, I would go to like, some networking groups, chambers of commerce, lead groups, all that stuff. I hated doing that. Absolutely hated it. Like I'm talking like my palms would get sweaty. Like I just was super uncomfortable with forced small conversation, small talk, right? Go there and what like all strangers, didn't really know what to say, didn't know all that stuff. But I think with some education and some training, some effort on your part and putting in some time and learning about that you possibly, not everyone, possibly can improve on that stuff. I don't know if like you're talking like Bobby Hirschman or some other people that are naturally, you see them, you're like, oh man, they're so outgoing. They're just so, so comfortable with all that stuff. There's a good chance that at some point in their life, they were not. They were very awkward. They didn't like doing that stuff. And then finally they switch it on or whatever. And there's also some extroverted people that I think that on the flip side of that is that you are naturally outgoing and you do all this stuff and you're always like outgoing, but then it turns into this whole thing where you're trying to please other people and you're trying to do all this stuff. And then eventually like you have that quiet moment where you don't have that outlet. And now you're sitting there by yourself with your thoughts. There's a lot that goes into it. There's so many different personalities out there. Everyone's different, but I mean, as far as the introverted, extroverted, I think it's not that simple. I think there are people that are naturally introverted, but the adapted personality, whether it be work or sales or, just in groups and everything like that, they act intentionally as an extrovert at that moment, but they would rather be home in sweatpants.
Would you consider me an introvert or extrovert?
See, I think that you are one of those people that naturally you are an introvert, but then given the circumstances, you are talkative, you're outgoing and everything else.
So I can tell you when I was in grade school, especially in high school, I was very much an introvert. I was that wallflower that you mentioned. When it came to the school dances, if I didn't have a date, I still went to the school dance. My barber was the DJ. And I'd known him since I was like 6 years old. So I'm sitting there hanging out with him. I'm just talking to him. Or I'm the guy volunteering to help make popcorn for the dance. Yes, done that.
But you wanted to be a part of it. That's more of an extrovert. That's more outgoing. You still wanted to be a part of it, but you weren't. All right, where does it go from there?
Well, but then as certain, different careers allow me to be a different type of person. When I'm in the cigar shop, I can sit there and have a conversation about cigars with anybody. I love talking about cigars with people. There are other areas as well that I enjoy having conversations about different topics that I absolutely love having conversations with people about. But like when I was growing up and not having a lot of friends, I was very much an introverted person.
Okay.
College kind of brought out a little bit more of that extrovert. Like that's where it started. But then once I got into my professional careers, that's when I started to become a little bit more of an extrovert.
Exactly what I said. It worked on you. You had to do it.
Because
you can't be
I had to learn how to be able to have a conversation with whoever it is about whatever the topic was. Mm-hmm. I didn't just shut down because it was a topic I didn't know or someone I didn't know. Mm-hmm. I had to go through a phase where I would try to have that conversation, and that made me more of an extrovert as time went on.
Extrovert doesn't necessarily you're interjecting all the time. This is something that you just put yourself out there, right? Doug says, is it about confidence? Yes, it is to a point. There are different ways that, again, I think the adapted part of your personality can be. you're in a group setting, you're not that outgoing person, you're not the center of attention. However, what I would implore to that person out there, and you can be this kind of a more of an extrovert just by effort, being out there, getting out there, doing that stuff, and getting in those group settings or whatever. Listen, be able to respond. If you have a thought, respond. Otherwise, don't just interject to interject, because that's then forced and it's awkward for everyone.
True.
You don't have to be that center of attention. You don't have to be the person running the conversation in a group or even to someone else. Listening and asking questions is a great way to learn to be a little bit more social and outgoing. Not saying you have to. If you don't want to be in those settings, that's fine. But yes, to answer the question, let me bring up who it was from Gina. Yes, perhaps extrovert only in certain situations. Again, I think that's your natural personality versus your adapted. I think this is something that you can at home. You aren't on social media. You're just sitting there. You're doing things around the house. You're perfectly content with that. If you are a full-blown extrovert, you may not be as comfortable with yourself by yourself as an introvert would be. But if you're full-blown one way or another, it lacks the balance, right? So you have to be able to, I think, in a sense, conduct yourself in certain circumstances differently. I do want to say what buzzkill is. Sorry, Greg, bud.
Fuck off, Greg.
No, don't fuck off, Greg. No, Bobby says, so you're talking about Bobby Hirschman, who was in town. He's from Philly. To me, it's all about being real and true and open. I think that's really important, if that makes sense to the group. Again, you have to adapt. You have to be able to do that. And again, this isn't saying anything with you guys out there that are introverts or full-blown extroverts. It's not necessarily a bad thing or a good thing, as long as you're happy and comfortable with what you're doing. If you find yourself in an uncomfortable situation, if you're an introvert, then I would implore you to just really listen and try to work on those communication skills. I'm getting heartburn from the whiskey.
Which one?
Yeah, exactly. And then you have Sean Anderson out there. I've never been an extrovert ever. He was the one running the shop on Friday.
Yeah.
And, again, he's talking to everyone and offering whiskey to everyone. So, again, I think everyone's got different definitions of what this means in certain circumstances.
I can definitely see with Sean about the type of person he is and what he's been through. I can definitely see where Sean is an introvert, but when he was hanging out at the cigar shop all day on Friday before the 10 event, smoking cigars and drinking whiskey, he became, it was a joke. Yeah. He was very much an extrovert.
Yeah.
But so Sean says with joke. No, so Friday when he was hanging out at the shop, it wasn't 8, it was 6.
8.
Sean was very outgoing. Like someone walking in who didn't know Sean would think he was an extrovert.
What are you saying?
But I've also, because we've had Sean on the podcast, because we've talked to him, because of some of his life experiences, I can definitely see where he may at times be an introvert, but I think he also will look for opportunities to actually express himself and be an extrovert and have a conversation.
Yeah. So I agree with you there. I think, Dario out there is kind of saying what, he's reiterating. So, man, we have a guy like that at the cigar shop I work, just includes himself in conversations and it's awkward as hell, kills the whole lounge. That's my point, is that you don't want to over try. I mean, this is like going back to I don't know. I think of it, in like a movie setting, you know what I mean? Where it's like, the awkward person trying to fit in, like literally walks up to a group of people that are talking and then everyone starts laughing and then they start laughing as a way to like interact and interject. And then they say something. Everyone's like, looks at them like, who the fuck are you? You know what I mean? Like you have to, like, again, this is a worked on skill both ways. And I think it goes both ways, and we can move on from this topic, is that, if you're naturally an extrovert, I'm not saying this is everyone, but I think that you have to work on sometimes being alone with your thoughts. Because again, when things are quiet, That's when people that are very socially outgoing and they want to be around people, they need that interaction, they need that stimulus. It's something that they struggle with. So you have to work on that side. If you're a natural introvert and you're full blown that side, you will find yourself in social settings. So I'm not saying you have to, but again, I am of the opinion that you eventually have to at least be able to survive those social interactions, and then you might actually enjoy a bit of it as well if you start listening and you're able to. Because if you just try to interject yourself and try to overcompensate for it, it will most likely come across as awkward, like Dario's saying. But there is a chance that, if you're listening, you might actually have something that they, a thought that they're going to think is either funny or important or relevant, and then that's when you want to say something. But you always have to, especially on that side of it, wait for your turn to talk. Don't talk over people. Don't try to interject just to interject.
Yeah,
because it's gonna kind of turtle you back up, because everyone's gonna look at you like, what?
Well, and I know I know we've seen that, or I have seen that before in the cigar industry, where you may have a group of people talking, and someone's interjecting on this conversation and then interjecting on this conversation and then going back to this conversation. Like they maybe they want to fit in so much, they're trying to talk to everybody, even though there's multiple conversations. But then also at the same time, there may be a group of people that are just hanging out, enjoying what they're doing. Like, for example, say smoking cigars. You may have a group of people that all know each other and they're smoking cigars, but no one's saying a word between them because they're there to smoke a cigar and relax. So there's not a conversation going on, but someone who's very outgoing may all of a sudden come up and start forcing a conversation. And even though those other people may be extroverts, if the conversation is forced, it does come across as awkward. And they're like, who are you? Like, we're just here to relax. Like, why are you throwing all this shit at us? Like sometimes you just have to read the room.
Always.
Yeah.
Always. Those listening out there, go ahead and chime in with anything else you want us to talk about. We got a few more things here, but I'm open to anything. Oh, we got a toxic masculinity one. Don't know if that's going to be a big one. Whatever happened to the Berenstain Bears? Oddly enough, I didn't know it was the Bernstein Bears.
Yeah.
That's a topic there. Childhood was completely ruined by that. I thought it was the Berenstain Bears, and it's the Bernstein Bears or whatever. Let's see. What else do we have here? The relationship between corporate America and human performance. How much demand is too much demand? Some heavy hitters out there tonight. My biggest thing on the corporate America and human performance, meetings to have meetings. I fucking hate that. Corporate America. It's like when you get too many people in positions that they need to make sure that their position, whether they're the lower level, middle management, upper management, and anywhere in between, the CEO, whatever, if you have to feel like you are conducting yourself and conducting your team, or people below you, above you, whatever, you are constantly trying to validate why you have your job and you're getting paid for what you get paid, and that's your main function every day, is to really validate that. That's a problem.
Yeah,
that's the game. That's the game of, and you hold other people back and you put other people under the bus. And I don't care for that part of it. I think that, how much demand is too much demand. If there are what they call key performance indicators, if there are, just absolutely set out goals and all that stuff, and you're not just adapting them because, we could do more or you could do more. It's like, if the person's doing their job that's laid out in front of them and they're doing a good job, they're hitting their goals, they're hitting their, whatever it is, they're getting their job done, that's a great employee. If you're trying to constantly again, validate that you're doing well, then you are in a toxic work environment. And that corporate America is probably at that point of, at some point, getting absolutely gutted by someone coming in from the outside, because they're like, what are we doing anymore? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's something that's like, if we're too administrative heavy, you know what I mean? That's the meetings, to set meetings. It's to have, all that stuff. If you're not accomplishing anything other than setting up another meeting, then it's like, then what are you doing? Like, I didn't like that. I didn't like that when I was in, like, and it was a smaller company, small, medium-sized business, but just to do it. But I don't think you should go the other way and just have no meetings and no, indicators and no benchmarks and all that stuff. It's like, hey, let's just keep doing business to do business. It's like, well, what's the goals? I mean, there should be, like, there's a balance there.
So I know with my current role in my company, which is a Fortune 200 company, we have a weekly team meeting.
Yeah.
Most of those weekly team meetings, even though they're blocked out for half an hour, most of them last less than 5 minutes. And it always ends with my manager saying, I'll give you guys, back some of your time. It's like, at least half the people that are in this team never said anything during the meeting. So, like, what was like that kind of like that running joke, like, here's another meeting that could have been sent in an email.
Yep. Yeah, there you go.
But I know
Tim Dodge, I got written up for not attending a meeting when my job was production manager. My argument was meeting to meet was not productive. Fair point.
I love it. I love
it. This one
sure, go ahead. But no, I actually appreciated that about my old manager at my company.
Mm-hmm.
When I was on my previous role and team. If they didn't have anything to actually discuss, they would send a message to the entire team saying, hey, I don't have anything to talk about this week. So unless someone needs to bring something up, meeting's canceled. Like, all right, cool. And that's it. We just, we all just continue on with our work. But in my current role, we'll have a meeting and, after a few minutes, the meeting's over because there really wasn't anything worth discussing that needed to be brought up.
Yeah.
And it's like, and that's why a lot of times I join those meetings and I have my microphone on mute, because I'm like, chances are I'm not going to have to say anything or won't need to say anything.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to have my mic on mute and I'm going to work while the meeting's going on, because I'm pretty sure I'm not going to miss anything.
So I think it's not a great work culture, right? So that's something that, and Austin asked that question on the podcast page. Same thing with sales, right? So I've seen that happen before in my personal career, and I've heard it from many people and many times over, is that, it's like you give a salesperson, for example, a commission structure, or you give someone like goals. Hey, if we hit these numbers, you're going to get this bonus or whatever it is. And as soon as that happens, in the next year, they're like, all right, we're going to up this because everyone hit their bonuses or they hit their commission. It's like, well, now you're fucking with people's money.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why sales reps leave so often.
That's one of the reasons. Others are on them, in my opinion. But it's like,
true.
You got to realize that, and I love it when I hear someone say something about, like, sales. It's like, if you hire a salesperson and you give them their goals and you give them their, their commission structure or whatever, and you're expecting to pay them $75K a year, but they just fucking kill it. Well, if it's based on growth, now they're up against their own numbers. So pay them the $100K that year and have a conversation with them. It's like, well, again, the reason you made this and you did a great job, but the next year the pay structure is going to stay very similar. Now you're up against your own numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can hit the same $100K, that's amazing. The numbers are still the same because they blew your budget a little bit, but they also made you more money or more sales. If you're running a bad P&L and you're losing money because they're selling more, then there's something else going on there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You don't want to put like a muzzle on that person, so that they're not able to do their job. Like, you can figure that out. But if you're just constantly, oh, I paid you too much. It's like, no, you paid me what you offered me. I just hit those goals. So why is that a bad thing? Why did you give me these goals if you think that now that we hit those goals, now you're going to actually like hurt me and make it even harder for me to do well. That's not good. That's that corporate America again being muddied. You know what I mean? Like that's a problem. And especially if you have someone like higher up that's based on like say profit, and then you have someone below them on sales, and the salesperson is just rocking it, and then this person above them are like, well, I'm not making enough money because we're selling more, but we're having to buy more, blah 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 blah. So they're getting paid more, but I'm getting paid the same because the profit's same percentage. It's like,
well, I remember
it's different jobs.
Well, I remember there was a conversation that kind of made its way through the grapevine in the cigar industry. There was a gentleman who took a job with a cigar company, and he was straight commission.
Yeah.
And someone had talked to that owner like, aren't you worried about that person being straight commission? Because if they do so much in sales, like you're going to have to pay them X amount of dollars. And that's a lot to pay a traveling salesperson. Like that may be too much. And the owner of that company, I will give them credit that the owner of that company is like, if that person is going out and selling me that much of my product, like, why shouldn't I pay them that?
The idea there
I want them to do that. I want them to get more sales. I will gladly pay them more money because that means they're selling more product.
If it's a percentage, it makes sense. That's where you set the goals, right? But again, it's, in a small to medium sized business, it's easier. In a bigger business, it's a little tougher because everyone's got different goals.
Well, there was a time when I was on the road doing sales, I was in between account visits, and all of a sudden there was a meeting that was supposed to happen, and I was getting a text message from my boss like, hey, we're starting the meeting, where are you? And I had to pull off the side of the road just to be able to join this meeting that benefited me none whatsoever.
Yeah, there's the team player side of it too.
Like, I'm like, really? Like the whole 30 minutes that I was pulled off on the side of the road, I could have been driving and going to an account and talking to a potential client or a customer.
Mm-hmm.
And instead I'm stuck on the side of a road in rural Michigan, while I'm on, this call. Like,
mm-hmm.
what's the point? Like, let me do my job. I think sometimes we schedule meetings and we don't realize it may be taking away from the personnel doing their job.
It can be. Again, there's, that's different focus points of different people. Sean says ding ding, call around on this one. I agree. I think we hit a lot of good points on that one. Sean, if you have anything else, but all right. So he says, I don't want to talk about what do you say?
Toxic masculinity.
How do you say it though? I don't know.
Was it in the comments or was it?
It's in the comments.
Okay.
He basically said Steve didn't want to.
Oh, you
Steve
dance.
Crane wants to skip the masculine question. All right. We can get into this. When we have Jesse on, you want to talk about men's mental health and everything else. So that's a little different. I looked up the comment that the text thread that he had for me. All right. So maybe it's too soon or not soon enough, but in light of the only thing I know that happened at the Oscars, here we go. Again, we're not going to comment on that. Maybe a discussion on, quote, what is healthy masculinity versus toxic masculinity? And then someone else. So that was Chris. And then Sean says, Chris, there is no toxic masculinity. There is just masculinity. Now, if that is not under control, it leads to bad things, but that's more a person problem, not a masculine problem. Chris then commented back. Again, this is something that we put on the community page and the podcast page, and this is why I love this, because we can do this type of thing. It's almost like they're sending in email questions, you know what I mean? But there's also a conversation happening in the meantime. So, Sean, okay, but the phrase toxic masculinity has certainly entered the discussion about what distinguishes that from a different kind of masculinity. Let me see what he writes here. All right. Nate, do you have anything else you want me to chime in here?
To a point, I agree. Masculinity is masculinity. Femininity is femininity. It can be toxic or productive. I think we have grown. Part of our culture has grown so infatuated with the idea of toxic masculinity that some men don't feel like they can actually be men. Like they feel like they're supposed to just be soft and let people roll over them. But there's something to be said about the guys that actually wake up, leave the cave, go out, kill something, drag it home for dinner. Like there's something still to be said about that. There's still something to be said about men that wake up and go to a job that is extremely difficult and rough on their body, and they do it because it provides for their family. And some of those jobs, if you were to look at the percentage of male and female employees, like it's very overweighted towards the men's side.
Mm-hmm.
You don't see too many female loggers out there. Obviously, there's a disproportionate amount of police officers, male or female.
Mm-hmm.
Same with firefighters, because it's a very physically demanding job. It doesn't necessarily mean that one sex is better at it than the other, but there's a difference in just how people are and what kind of careers they go into. Like engineering is not necessarily a job where you have to be very physical at, but yet we see a disproportionate amount of men be engineers than female.
Mm-hmm.
And psychologists will say that there's a reason for that, but men and women are hardwired a little differently, and engineering might be something that appeals more towards men. So it may come across as a masculine thing to do, even though anybody can do it. Just the way people are wired, it may come across more, more tilted one way or the other. But at the same time, teaching, like there are more female teachers than men teachers. There are more female nurses than male nurses.
So what does that have to do with toxic masculinity?
I think the problem is we think in the way our society is right now, we think being masculine is toxic. Just being masculine in general at times. There are certain aspects of our culture that if you're a male that likes to smoke cigars and drink whiskey, that's a toxic man right there, because it's a male driven thing. Like more men do it than women. So it's a male dominant thing. And so it may come across as toxic, even though there are plenty of females that enjoy cigars and whiskey as well. We've had some of them on the podcast.
Masculinity, there's two sides of this. I think that what's being portrayed right now is, to your point, Nate, is that being masculine is outdated in a sense, right? You're going back years and decades, even like when we grew up. It's like from the movie side of it, right? It's like you had the Arnold Schwarzeneggers, you had the Sylvester Stallones, you had the Bruce Willis, right? What he's going through. But anyway, even before that, you watch the show, and just to relate to people, right? Like the show Mad Men, right? Those 60s and everything else. There was a time that being masculine was being dominant. It was being abrasive. It was being controlling. That was the term. I think the masculinity that is a healthy masculinity, to Chris's point, is taking care of your family, taking care of your people. That's not just that's a man doing it, right? And not to get into the whole gender conversation or anything like that, but the sense is that it is something. It's outdated until the first time you don't hold the fucking door, right? So there is some lingering effects, right? You're right. So my point is that you can be masculine, you can be feminine, you can be whatever the fuck you want to be, but it's the toxic masculinity is the outdated stuff where being a not drinking bourbon. No, drinking bourbon, smoking cigars. It's, if you are the toxic masculinity, might be really outdated and it's old school, is that you can drink more than anyone else and get fucking hammered because you're a man. And then all the shit that goes with that. It's the fact that, oh, I'm a man. It's like you look at like the fraternity, like, stereotypes. I'm going to bang all these girls. That's that toxic masculinity. That is where it's been, in my opinion, polluted now, where it's like anything you do, to your point, that is more masculine. It's like, oh, of course you would. You're a man. Like, you don't care about women. You don't care about like any of the other genders, any other walks of life, anything else. It's just, you're just like, oh, that's all you care about. It's like, no, there's nothing wrong with a father being a good father. That's not toxic masculinity. That's being a good person, and you just happen to be a fucking man.
Yeah.
And it's not just that you go out of the cave and kill something while the woman just stays back and waits for you to come home. Now masculinity is that you can both go out and kill it out in the world, and you're partners.
Yeah.
I don't care if you're, two guys, two girls, two whatever, guy and a girl, whatever it is, like, but the masculinity, like this toxic masculinity thing that, Chris is bringing up, it's not about like he brought up the Oscars. No, being masculine is not going up and smacking another person, another man, because they disrespect your wife. That's fucking dumb. Especially because you were just offended. If that other person
groped your wife, then
attacks
absolutely.
your wife, or is aggressive towards your wife, then yeah, you're defending at that point.
Yes.
It's about, that's the difference here, is that toxic would be you are escalating it to a point that I have to be this caveman, as you were talking about, Nate. I have to be the dominant person at all times. And that was the irony. And I'm sorry, Bobby, but to talk about what Chris was talking about is that when fucking Will Smith went up there and he's like, I'm supposed to take care of my people and all this stuff. And he related to his character and like was bawling like a fucking, like just child or whatever. It's like, he's emotionally unstable. And that's when that happened. But it's like, if you're going around, you're cheating on your wife, you're doing this, you're all about the money, you're all about the status, you're all about that. That could be maybe toxic masculinity. That's not toxic. It's just outdated, man. Like, fucking grow up. You know what I mean? Like, you're just hurting people around you. That's not okay. Same thing if you're feminine. Like, same thing if you're overcorrecting and you're just like, men are bad and all this stuff. If you don't agree with me and all blah blah blah, the feminists to the far falling off side of feminists, you can be a supporter of feminists and women and other genders and all that stuff, whether you're female, male, or anywhere like in the spectrum, whatever. But if you're just that person where you're like, no, I'm a man, like I can do whatever the fuck I want, that's the toxic part of it.
Yeah.
That's the outdated part of it. That's not okay. But if you want to be a good father, if that's who you are, if you want to be a good person, if you want to be stable, if you want to do that, those are those masculine type of qualities that we want to hold on to. The rest of it is just justification for you to be a fucking prick. That's it. That's all it is. You know what I mean? I can do whatever the fuck I want because I'm a man, and this is my world. It's like, yeah, well, what happens when you stop getting pussy? Yeah, you're gonna be a fucking you know I'm going with that. Women make the world go round. We all know that. We're just along for the ride. To a point. Is that good enough, Sean? Anyone else got anything? Jesus.
Thank God we started
They have an open relationship. Now Bobby's talking about it. They have an open relationship. It's weird. They're okay banging others. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're fucked up people. We should not be paying attention to them.
Yeah, it's a good point, Sean.
Greg's not saying a fucking. What did I say, Greg?
Greg, you're allowed to comment. Like, what?
Dangerous ground. I love it. Like, yeah, this is perfect. You wanted me to talk about it, and I did. There you go. Oh, man.
Well, I mean, to Sean's point, like, there's difference as a male. There's a difference between being peaceful and harmless. They're not the same thing. He's never been harmless. Like, he's always been, because of the career path that he had chose, like, he's always been a certain type of individual. That doesn't make Sean, like, Sean is the type of person that will absolutely defend his house with his life or the bad guy's life. He will absolutely defend it.
Yeah.
That's not a toxic trait.
That's the point, right? That's the whole thing is I kind of joked about, the fact that, being that toxic, like manly person, and all of a sudden it's like, like, oh, now you don't have a woman. Now you're going to get worse. It's about balance. It's about being a good person.
Yeah.
Is my whole point of this whole thing.
Yeah.
Is that you
You
can
just
defend.
happen to be a guy.
I don't care if you're whatever you are, but this whole toxic masculinity thing has been overplayed to a point that it's like there is a toxic masculinity. Like, have you ever seen American Psycho?
Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, there is that, but now it's an everyday term that's being overused for someone like a person like Sean, who it's like, yeah, I'm gonna take care of my home, I'm gonna take care of my people, I'm gonna take care of myself, all that stuff. And it's like I got my shit together. It's not because I'm man, hear me roar. It's the fact that it's like I'm I am a man and I want to provide the best I can for my family, and I do want to feel important in my own life. That's okay. That's not toxic.
Yeah, I agree.
That's not it at all. Yeah, Sean says, right. It's the person, not masculine or feminine, or this or not. It's just people who are dicks. Yeah, you're absolutely right, brother. All right. There you go, Sean. You got it out of us.
We didn't dodge it.
I wanted to. Hector says, how impactful has this pandemic been on sales? And I asked him in the cigar industry or otherwise, and he didn't respond back. So how impactful has the pandemic been on sales? Nate, what do you think?
Well, I mean, just so most of the time that I've been employed at the Tinder Box, with the exception of the first month and a half, I'd say, of the pandemic, like it's actually been really good for sales because we've seen more customers that typically come in and they may hang out at the shop, smoke one, or come in, buy a cigar or two for the night. Since they were working at home, they were coming in, they were buying more cigars.
Yeah.
Because then they were sitting at home, they were working on their back patio or whatever, they were smoking cigars. Like, we saw sales increase from that perspective. But then on the flip side of that, it's had kind of a negative impact on production because the countries where these cigars are coming out of, they also had to shut down and make changes because of the pandemic. And so they've not been able to produce the volume of cigars that they had in the past or would have normally. And so we've seen less product come in, but from a staff perspective, when we've had less product come in, the staff has then pointed customers to other products that we have in stock that customer may enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
So, so we've kind of helped negate from a sales side on this particular industry. We've helped negate some of the negative impacts of that. We also saw in the last couple of years, liquor consumption go up. And those distilleries, especially distilleries that produce bourbon, they have to age their product for so long, and there may not have been as much product out there, specific product to meet customer demands. So then those customers are then finding other products. So I think both of those industries have seen growth in the pandemic, but there have been other sides that have seen negatives and downturns.
Yeah, I'd say, to Hector and to your point, I think that, at this time, so what we saw in the pandemic, right? So everything at first slowed down immediately and then picked up. In the cigar industry, a lot of other industries, is that, at that point, everyone was still, and in this country, they were still getting paid one way or another. So the income was more or less steady. It wasn't for everyone, but I mean, it was something where there was income coming in wherever it was coming from. And there was this sense of this temporary thing. So people were spending money. They weren't spending money out and about. They weren't going out as much. They weren't doing that. So people had more money. Then all of a sudden you saw projects happening in their homes, their houses, or whatever else. And then all of a sudden you saw all the costs of goods just start skyrocketing. And that has not quit. So to the question is that, yes, it's great. Business is good. Now on the tail end of this is that when you more or less shut the world down for a period of time, now we have that supply chain. We have that issue of the trickle effect, in a sense that now everything is going up in price because everyone's got to make up their nut from when things weren't being produced. So the supply chain all over in every industry got fucked. And so now you've gotten to the point where now what we're seeing right now, not only in America, but it's like everywhere, I think, but it's not because of just like what everyone says, because who's the president or whatever it might be, but it's something that it's like, this was what was expected when basically everyone was expected to slow everything down to the point that when they, quote, open the world back up, everything was as it was before. It's not. So now the housing market, the goods, the building supplies, same thing with like what Nate was talking about with the cigar industry specifically, same thing. People are catching back up. But then when you look at all these things with the containers, the shipping and everything else, this is across the board in all industries. The pandemic has made everything more expensive. So we rode the wave when things were still, money was flowing in, but there wasn't as much cost, like gas prices, like all that stuff. People weren't driving because they had nowhere to fucking go. Now they're supposed to go back out, and it's like, well, shit. Now it's like between utilities, between gas prices, between my property taxes went up almost like literally. When I say almost 20, it's like 19 point something %.
Yeah.
So nothing fucking happened. I'm still paying for the same house, but now because everything was reassessed and the world fucking ended, now all of a sudden I have to pay another 20% property taxes for the same house I was living in during the pandemic. But it's like, oh, things are more expensive now for the moment. You're not planning to move, so fuck you, right?
I remember, so in Ohio, I don't know about all the states where all of our listeners are. So in the state of Ohio, some of the freeways will have those overhead signs on the freeway. And sometimes they will show like how many traffic deaths or, something else as there have been year to date. And I remember last year in 2021, they're like, oh, so far this year, there have been X number of traffic deaths, and that's up by this percentage. I'm like, well, no shit, because back in May, people started slowly trickling back into work. Different businesses started opening back up. Like most of 2020, everything was shut down. People weren't going anywhere. I remember some of the, there were some Wednesdays during the initial part of the pandemic where I would drive all the way to the Tinder Box to meet you and grab cigars because we were doing it remote. So you were here in your garage. I was on my back patio.
Right.
So I would drive to the Tinder Box to be able to pick up the cigars that we were going to have that evening on the podcast. The entire 25-minute drive over to the shop, there's almost no one on the freeway.
Right.
And then all of a sudden in 2021, things started to get a little bit more back to normal. And they're like, oh, compared to last year, there's been this many more traffic deaths. I'm like, no shit, because there's more drivers out on the road. Like we've talked about it. You talked about it the other night when you were looking at numbers for the business at the Tinder Box. You weren't comparing it like we had a 10 event this year. We sold tickets. That is something that initially shows up in sales dollars.
Correct.
When you look in the system, you can't compare that to 2021 when we didn't have a 10 event. So you had the forethought. You were comparing it to previous years that we actually did have a 10 event. You were looking at similar years with similar circumstances. So you were saying, okay, so far this year with having a 10 event and other stuff going on compared to a previous year that we had a 10 event, here's how those numbers stack up against one another. You didn't sit there and go, hey, this year, because we had a 10 event, we sold 230 tickets. I'm going to compare that to the previous year where we didn't have a 10.
Agreed.
Like, you were smart enough and Brian does the same thing. When sometimes we look at those numbers, we're looking, at how sales are going. Brian wants to compare it to certain years, certain years that may have been the best or had similar circumstances, not just the previous year. Like,
well, that goes back to the SWOT analysis, right? The outside threats and opportunities versus the strengths and weaknesses. Bobby Hirschman asks, Steve, how many of those customers have you kept after the pandemic? We've had people that are smoking less because they are back out in the workforce in a sense, but that brings up a good point is, during that shutdown, and we talked about this on the podcast, and I've talked, and I've admired people that did really well, not just the businesses that did well during the pandemic. And what was interesting to be in a brick and mortar type setting, there were people that they had to close up shop because they didn't know what to do, and they just couldn't survive. Now, one of the things that we did was during that time of being closed down is that we used the tools that we had. Now, we're not on Amazon, we're not anything else, but it's like we use that customer base and the social media outlets and email and everything else of saying, all right, we can't be in there. This is the what they kept saying, the new normal for the moment, whatever, is we stayed after it. We stayed active, we adapted, we did all this stuff that we could do. That on the flip side of that, there were a lot of businesses that just basically shut down, took the government money, and waited for things to get back to normal. And they probably saw a surge initially once things opened back up because people wanted to get back out. Long term, the people that just sat back and waited, they might luck out and they might do well. The people that actually were very active during that time, and there was a business identity to the customer base that you may have even grown during that time, that we went through it together, and we all knew that we had to get through it. And so now that things are, quote, back to normal, to your point, it's not the same numbers of 2020 or 2021. But the thing is that now when you look at it, if you played the game, in my opinion, right, not the safe way, but you just went after it the best you could and adapted, and you just roll over and wait for the world to open back up, you will have better success because it's constantly adapting. The pandemic right now is that people come in to the shop, or people they're going to piss and moan. They still need to fill up their gas tank. I don't fill up my tank anymore because I don't know what the fucking gas prices are anymore. And I put premium in my car. So now instead of just waiting until my tank, fills up, I'm putting $30-$40 in, and then I'm driving away. Because that's the reality of it. With the cigar industry, the same thing. People may not be buying as much as they were when they were sitting at home smoking on their patio and they had the normal income and normal prices. Now everything's fucking gone up. So now it's all right, so I'm still buying cigars. I don't care what they cost, but I don't have as much time to smoke. But I still, I appreciate that they have that identity that people were there for each other during the time. Other people just literally turtled up and just waited they went to hibernation.
Yeah.
They didn't know how to respond. So that was the whole thing. It's to that point, to Bobby and everything, we've kept a lot of customers, even from Philadelphia, from Tennessee, because we took to, in this regard, the airwaves. I was online on the social media and also email. It's hey, we got this special going on.
Yeah, you were doing the weekly
specials. We're still
specials.
doing all this stuff. We didn't just stop. We went after it. So the pandemic, we rolled through it in a more, I don't say aggressive, but a more active way. And I think that pans out. I think we have kept a lot of customers. I think the people that were there for other people, they had identity before and during and now after. They are shopping at those places. Everyone was getting into that kind of mindset of shopping online. Well, people want to get back out, but if you go out to I was talking to a customer today, and they went into a store. I'm not going to say what it was. They literally wanted to spend money, and it was a men's clothing store. And that person was literally so I walked in. There was this person over here helping this customer. This person over here. There's a girl behind the counter. There was this person over here, and I stood there. I'm looking around. And I'm looking at stuff, and 15 minutes went by and no one even came up to me to see if I needed help. And he's I just walked out. Because that's why people before the pandemic, people that worked retail, they just stopped helping people. They were just clerks. Because everyone's now in this mindset. It's I go in, I can shop for myself. There's no, you don't want to pay employees to actually help them. So it's people go back into retail stores, that people are still that rude and just nonchalant. You can buy if you want. You can go home if you want. Like, why are you at my store? You know what I mean? It's like literally like a cook at a restaurant that's like, why am I so busy? Why are these people? Why don't they just eat at home? It's like, you get paid for this. This is your job.
Well, and I remember during 2020, the first year of all this, there were some restaurants at Easton that took advantage of the curbside or the carry out.
Take it outside of Easton in general.
But
there are people everywhere.
But I'm talking about the conversation you and I had. But yes,
okay.
there were restaurants out there that took advantage of being able to do curbside or being able to do carry out, even though they couldn't have customers actually dining inside their stores. And then there were other restaurants that when they opened back up later, like they waited a little bit, and by the time they actually opened back up, they were actually behind all the other ones that had already opened. And I remember even during 2020 and especially into 2021, there was a manager of a restaurant at Easton that would come into the Tinder Box, and he was sitting there talking about how busy they were. And, on a Saturday or Sunday, 3 p.m. until closed, it was nothing but reservations. Like they were literally having to turn customers away. And even though they had less capacity than prior to the pandemic, they were doing more business because they were open and people, they did things to allow customers to come and enjoy their restaurant during the pandemic. And so people were coming back to them even after things opened up. But other places that didn't necessarily jump on that were much slower in getting customers back into the door and getting those numbers back to where they used to be. And some cases, it even led to, and I can't speak for Easton, but I know it's happened in other places where, some restaurant, may have been slower to open up and slower to have customers come in. And so some of the staff left that restaurant to go to another restaurant that did open up, so that way they could make money. They could make more money.
You had to. People want to work. Bobby says, our one shop was so fortunate to be able to do curbside. A local shop owner who has 18 stores didn't react like we did right out of the gate, and we are still thriving off of that. The shutdown and free government money. Same thing. I still have customers come in that I haven't seen, like because they're seasonal smokers. So now we went through, things opening back up. Then all of a sudden they, in Ohio is all masks again. No one know what to do. And then all of a sudden now it's getting warm again. I've had multiple customers that they reminisce on the fact that the last time, sadly, and I'm glad they're coming back in, they reminisce on the fact that they pulled into my cul-de-sac to pick up cigars because they were supporting us from the very beginning during that shutdown, because they were on social media. They were watching all that stuff and like, cool, like I want to support these guys. I want to smoke cigars. I can order them online. But yeah, if this is a possibility, and they were literally like piling up in my cul-de-sac because we adapted. We did what we could do. And that's actually a fond memory of the pandemic for several customers of ours, is that now, better or worse, they know where I live, but it's like now they know that it's like, I remember, like, oh, dude, I haven't seen you since I was coming by your house. That's, again, the identity. They have a connection. That's the whole point of business. That's why people come to the store. Well, like, that's why you shop where you shop. And we need to move on to another topic. But go ahead.
I mean, I know one customer in particular, like he was a regular at the Tinder Box. And then when the shutdown happened and you were doing the weekly specials, which every time we've talked about it, I give you a lot of credit for coming up with that idea.
Thank you.
to keep business going and try and drive more sales while stuff was shut down. There was a couple of customers that every time you would post those weekly specials, like they were taking advantage of those weekly specials, and they were actually buying more cigars than they had been previously.
Yeah.
And so then even when things opened back up and you could actually go into a store, those customers were coming back into the Tinder Box more often than they had been before.
Right.
Just because that customer experience, and you guys wanted to do everything you could, it hit a nerve with them on a good way.
There's two sides of it, real quick. Like, and we'll move on to this last one here before we close out, since we're at 2.5 right now. But not only do those customers, from my feedback is, not only do they appreciate that we made ourselves available, and a lot of businesses did. Bobby's saying, he had the backdoor sales, same thing. It's like, and then there were other small businesses, like you had to tread lightly, right? Like we weren't advertising it to the point. I wasn't putting it on social media that you can come to my house and pick up cigars. I had to tell my neighbors, when they were like, what are all these cars doing in our cul-de-sac? It's like, well, so, the ones that didn't know I worked at a cigar shop, I told them, and they were like, oh, that's great that you're actually trying to do this, But it's also that survival thing. We were all in it together. We didn't know how to do what we were supposed to do. But during the time, we did it in a manner that we were respectful, and they wanted a place to go back to. And they were telling friends about it. Like, this is cool. It's that identity, you know what I mean? You don't have to just shop online and take for granted the delivery drivers. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That's what happened, a big part of it. So how did the pandemic affect the sales? Long term, it's affected it in a bad way, in my opinion, because costs have gone, they've skyrocketed. Not just like cigars did not skyrocket, but percentage wise, they took a huge bump, biggest increase we've seen in years. And it's justified because there's been a lot of cost into it. The smoking tent event that we put on, one last thing on that is that the tent that Fido put up, who was our partner in that, it costs the same with less stuff. It costs more, in fact, with less things. Like little shit, like a table used to be like $8. Now it's like $10 or $11. The chairs used to be like $1 something. The chairs are now $2 something. Like the tent used to have a floor constructed. It didn't have a floor this year. That was like a $4,000 to $5,000. You know what I mean? It's like everything just went up. And it's like, well, yeah, because they didn't put up a tent in 2 years. What are they supposed to do? They're bleeding at this point.
Yeah.
So it's like, this is the big thing. All right. One more big one here from Sean he wanted to bring out. I'll read this, and then we'll close it out. No closing remarks tonight because, again, we've had multiple topics. So this will be our closing topic here, and we'll round it out. So appreciate you guys tuning in, and thanks to our sponsors. But we've got what would it take for the country, and we'll see where this goes. I'm just going to read it straight up. What would it take for the country to get back to being neighbors and stop being so damn offended? The destruction of social media, an overhaul of primetime news, a change in education system that seems to be cranking them out, and why doesn't the rich elite not follow the rules? And why doesn't the rich elite not following the rules piss them off as much as what someone says on a damn podcast? I don't think he's talking about ours. And when did we decide free speech was fine as long as we agree with the speech? What has caused the wussification? I don't know if that's a word, but wussification of America. Are we now a product of too much success and not enough struggle?
So I don't think there's any.
To the audience, throw your comments up on the feed here on that one. I wish I could post that, but that was not on the feed, so I can't put it up on the screen.
I read that. I don't think there's any one issue that you could point as the problem. There's also not one thing that you could point to as a fix. I think it's a culmination of multiple issues that would need to be addressed. I think.
Agreed, Tim.
I think what we've seen over the course of the last, not just the last 6 years, I would say, more than a decade. What we've probably seen over the last 10 to 15 years. We've just seen more divisiveness among people. We've seen people either from a social or political side be on one side of the aisle, and those two medians get further apart.
Okay.
So there's not one issue that's the problem, not one single thing that would solve it. It would take multiple things because there's a lot of driving factors as to what's caused people to not be as neighborly with other people and how to fix that.
There's no need for neighbors at this point, in my opinion. You know what I mean? For a lot of people, because you can just be that. We talked about introvert versus extrovert. You know, like you don't need to rely on your neighbors anymore. You should. I'm not saying, bear with me here, but you can just call a service. You can just go online. You can fucking order your groceries and not leave your house.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, hey, you know, back in the day, it's like, oh, we're out of sugar.
Go to the neighbor and ask
I'm
for
just
a
gonna
cup of
knock on the
sugar.
door, like, hey, you got a cup of sugar? Like, I'm making something. Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying like that's suburban life. I'm not saying like, you know, like anything about like inner city and all, but it's like even there's this community sense, right? I mean, everyone like dogs on the fact that, oh, like the suburban life or the rich life or, you know, that those levels. But there's a huge sense of community in other areas, urban and lower income and like the whole spectrum. People are in it together. But anymore, you don't need to be, because you can literally order it and it'll be there in 2 hours.
Yeah.
Right? You don't need to do that.
Like you can literally order your groceries online, drive to the store, pull up into a lane, get on your phone, tell them you're there.
They will deliver it to you now.
Yeah, there's
you don't
that
need
too.
to
Yeah.
drive there.
Yeah.
You don't need to. The big cities, it makes sense, right? You know, big cities, you don't drive, you have to walk, you got to do all this stuff, you know, like, but anyways, like to this point of, you know, what will it take? I got to be honest, you know, that's what we talked about with the best practices from the pandemic years that we were just talking about, is that I still remember the podcast with Mike Herklots, you know, about the fact that the front porch community, right? You know, where it's like everyone used to be so busy, they used to be on their back porch just to get away. Everyone was forced to stay home in a sense. Most people were forced to stay home. And, you know, they were sitting on the front porch just for that social interaction. I think a lot of people met their neighbors for the first time. And it's something that it's like, that is great. You know, even tonight before, you know, like, and we've been cordial, whatever, but because, you know, this is this is almost like a time transport. The fact that, you know, Nate, you were over before and, you know, I was letting the dog out and we went out there and you're standing on the back patio and it's like my neighbor's out there and he brings it up. He's like, hey, you know, do you see this branch? So he's got a tree that's on his property, but it kind of overlooks my house in a sense. And there's a broken branch. I didn't see that. He's like, yeah, I'm going to try to take care of that. You know, and like all of a sudden, like we're having this conversation. We've lived next door to each other for 3 years. We've said hi, didn't know his name until tonight. I'm really good friends with neighbors across the street. They're more, you know, like whatever, social. And like we've been over each other's houses and all that stuff. But it's like,
they watch your dog.
Yeah, they watch. Yeah. But it's one of those things. It's like, you know, like it's worth getting to know your neighbors because you are coexisting. And what, you know, Sean's saying, stop being so damn offended. You know, if my neighbor puts up a political sign that I don't agree with that candidate or whatever, like the social cause is, not that I don't necessarily agree with it or not, but it's like, it's just one of those things. It's like, we don't see eye to eye, but at the same time, we are living next door to each other. We're living on the same street. There's no reason to be enemies over any issues unless you literally are damaging my property or damaging, like, you know, you're bringing down, like the old school, like you don't mow your lawn, you don't do this, like your house is turning to shit. You're, you know, like, you know, you're not representing the neighborhood. Like that's one thing. There's identity to it again, but there's no reason to be. If you are offended, that's fine, but just keep it at bay. You know, I was talking to someone about the fact that, you know, I'm going to start hitting the trails again now that it's warmer. You know, I did it last year when it's cold, but now that I have the dog, it's about the time, April's the time I got Tony, right? And so we were still taking walks. I didn't want to take him out in the shitty weather. You know, he can run around the backyard a little bit, but it's like, I'm going to hit the trails again here, right here. It's Alum Creek Trail. It's like 28 miles. You know, I hit the ones right by us. And I was smoking a cigar out there. And I still remember the time that, you know, a couple people were like, oh God, you know, like I could have done without that. I remember one lady that was running and she literally turned around and she's like, you're killing me, man. Like, you know, all that stuff. And I'm like, thinking to myself, it's like, you're the same person that if I turn around and say, you know, Well, you don't need to run your fucking mouth because you don't know who you're talking to.
I remember
Not
that.
me.
I remember that.
Like, I'm not going to do anything, but you run your mouth to the wrong person. Now, all of a sudden, you're the victim. It's like, no, you ran your mouth because of something that is not really doing anything to you, but you are just constantly offended by fucking everything. Chances are your life is miserable. You think it's great, but you're constantly upset. You can't sleep at night unless you take your fucking sleeping pill. And then you're out running on a path and some person's smoking a cigar and you run your mouth to that person because you think that you can. But as soon as if I would have said something back, now all of a sudden I'm being the aggressor. That's what I'm saying. It's like you don't need, like, we're sharing the same
You'd have been
space.
the toxic man.
Well, but what's it going to take to that point? It's not the destruction of social media. It's not the overhaul of the primetime news. News has always been that way, in my opinion. It's always been, there's always a bias. There's always that. It's the echo chamber. And yes, Bobby, we're using the F word tonight, all right? That's what happens when we talk about these topics.
Well, I think when you talk about the nighttime news, people identify more with it than they had previously.
But I hear more often than not that I don't even watch the news anymore. That's the term I hear all the time. I don't even watch the news anymore because it's just too depressing. Not even local news, but even national news. You know what I mean? It's like I saw a story of like now the new COVID thing is like this morning. It was about how it affected like new mothers. And then like the last one I saw is that you would have a better, literally, what was it? It was about internet connection. Like people that didn't have internet connection, like were more susceptible to like, you know, severe COVID response because they didn't know where testing facilities were and all that stuff. And I'm like, you're just still talking about this. Like what, why? It's negative. It's absolutely negative. It's just constantly plugging away at it. So I don't think it is. So Sean, I think it is a matter of adapting. I said it from the very beginning, not to get on the COVID thing. This pandemic could not have existed if we didn't have the iPhones and other devices in our pockets. They realized that we could actually function as a society remotely because of the technology at hand. This would not have happened. You could not be holed up in your house with your only news being the 3 major broadcast stations and a newspaper coming to your door, because it just, people would lose their shit. And you didn't have, you couldn't go to the grocery store. Well, you couldn't get groceries delivered. You didn't have Amazon. You didn't have Facebook. You didn't have Instagram. You didn't have like TikTok like you literally like this. That's the only reason that this was able to happen, is because we had the tools available. So it is, in my opinion, Sean, asking this question and this topic part for this, the end of the part 2 is, there will be an adaptation. And I hope that we keep the best practices that we had during that shutdown in the last 2 years, that we actually do care about people more than the fact that I can stock up 162 rolls of toilet paper at my fucking house. that is a commentary on America and society as a whole, is that is when it comes down to caring about people, that's what they cared about. They cared about toilet paper. Let's not forget that. Let's not let the powers that be and all this stuff transpire, that we don't forget the fact that we cared about everyone living and being away from people. But fuck you if you want to wipe your ass. That is, in summary, the pandemic in a whole for America.
Well, 2020 was the toilet paper.
God bless.
2021 it was the gas.
I know.
Where you had people filling up
laundry baskets with holes in them.
Or filling. I saw one where the guy put a tarp into the bed of his truck and just started pumping gas into the bed of his truck. And then as he's driving away, it's just sloshing everywhere. It's like, no, I mean,
go ahead, and then we gotta shut it down.
Well, I mean, I think it also depends on the
Tim
type.
says great way to end.
Yeah,
you're welcome.
All right. No, I think it also depends on the type of person you are, and whether or not you're the type of person that people want to interact with and want to be around, even during the pandemic and after. You know, I've got neighbors on one side of me that I don't care to know who they are, because they damaged their property. They damaged my property. I don't give a shit about them. Neighbors on my other side are great people. I've talked to them. They've come over. We've shared drinks together. When they had an emergency for someone in their household, they actually knocked on my door and said, "Hey, I have to go to the hospital. I got my dog in the backyard. Can you look after my dog?" Like, sure, I'll go set out my chair on the backyard, smoke a cigar, drink whiskey, and make sure your dog doesn't kill himself. Like,
Yeah.
But
does your dog drink whiskey?
They will after that. No. But no, because I actually presented myself as a kind and caring person, when that person had an issue come up, they would say, "Hey, can you look after this while I'm gone?" Like, sure, I'm there for you. My other neighbors, they're dicks, and if I had something that I had going on, I definitely wouldn't reach out to them. I'd reach out to my other neighbor. But at the same time, because they're shitty people, they wouldn't reach out to either one of their neighbors because either one of their neighbors doesn't give a shit about them.
At least you gave the effort to realize that they're dicks. You have to do that. At least figure that part out.
Yeah.
Don't assume.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, that was a fun part too there, folks.
A lot of different things to
Thanks for the topics. We might do that more often and see what people got out there, whether or not we have a guest. But thank you guys very much. Happy Whiskey Wednesday. Thanks to Tinder Box at Easton, Columbus, Ohio. We had the La Aurora, Preferido, the Broadleaf, which is the diamond, and the #1 size. Thanks to Nate for bringing the OHLQ Maker's Mark private selection, the Caramel Mocha Bomb. Listen to part 1. If you're listening to the audio on part 2, click back to part 1. Listen to what we had to say about that. We're also sipping on the Maker's new version, if you will, marketing-wise, 46. Thank you guys to the Bourbon and BS community page for all the topics and the Bourbon and BS podcast followers. Make sure you turn your notifications on, because I had someone else again today say they didn't even know we were still doing it because they don't get the notifications. But also patreon.com/Bourbon and BS podcast, or Venmo at Bourbon and BS if you guys want to contribute to the show. Altadis USA, thanks for the Reserva Real Romeo Julieta that we're both enjoying right now, which I think goes well with the 46. Honestly,
I haven't even poured the 46, but I think it does go a little bit better with the private selection.
Yeah. I can agree with that as well. And then buyjack.com/Bourbon BS if you guys want some swag, check it out. We've had a lot of support. We had someone else buy the charity shirt that Nate's got on, which is the green one that's coming down hopefully this week. Not in a sense we don't want to do it more, but we're going to get the website updated. You guys are awesome. Thanks for tuning in from all across the country and across the world. You guys make this happen, and I love the conversation, and I hope that you guys felt included tonight. And last but not least, please drink responsibly. If you guys are driving tonight and you guys have been listening, make sure that you guys take your time and do it responsibly. And if you need an Uber, taxi, Lyft, whatever, make sure you do that. Thank you guys very much, and we will see you guys next week. Cheers.
Cheers.